This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto was changed by Kurama into a girl. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Jounin Hitaki Kakashi, Genin Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Uzumaki Naruto made up Team 7, which was waiting for their next mission in front of the mission desk. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, spoke to the group in front of him after looking up from the stack of papers and scrolls arranged neatly on the long wooden desk. He looked at each one separately, waiting for them to select one. Team 7, we have a lot of D-rank missions for you to choose from. Most just came in this morning. There is one for maintenance at the orphanage, gardening, walking the Inuzuka dogs, cleaning, someone is moving house, and there is also feeding the Nara clan's deer among others, he said. A certain blonde knucklehead stepped forward and slammed his hands on the long desk just as Kakashi was about to reply. How dare he speak to the Hokage like that? Sakura said, staring at him with wide eyes. But Gigi, come on, those are the lowest of low kind of missions you can get. We need something more challenging. And besides, the Inuzukas walk their own dogs. He ought to be more respectful. Her inner self declared that he did have a point as this thought crossed her mind. A glaring face directly in front of Naruto's interrupted him mid-sentence. And the deer are the Nara's responsibility. Heck, the buck would attack us if even came near, so why should we? I said. Don't speak to the Hokage like that, you ignorant baka, that's disrespectful. Sakura blushed and bowed her head respectfully as Sarutobi said, it's quite alright Sakura, this old man needs some kick in his life, before returning to her position. The brown-haired Chunin sitting on the Hokage's right side captured everyone's attention. Now Naruto, to explain your questioning, there is a new litter of dogs ready to start, but nobody has the time to step aside to walk all 7 of them. As for the Nara's deer, they are usually looked after by the head of the clan who is currently out on a mission, and the family sent this in as a D rank. I believe the buck is kept separate at this time of year. Yes, thank you Iruka-san. Now Naruto, I understand that you are looking for something more fulfilling. But the only way I can assign the team a higher ranking mission is if I am given consent by your Jounin leader and all teammates are accepting of it, and if of course you have completed enough D ranks, which I believe you have. His statement elicited a variety of reactions from the Sarutobi. Iruka got up and said he didn't think they were ready, while Naruto leapt around the room in delight and the sullen Uchiha grinned. While the Hitaki continued to read his small orange book, which Hiruzen felt compelled to look at as well, Sakura appeared to be caught between two opposing ideas. After putting the book in his vest, the Jounin calmly responded, Team 7, Iruka, please settle down. Kakashi. What is your decision? He said he thought they were prepared for a legitimate mission. The same reactions erupted once more, but the Hitaki intervened quickly. Iruka-san, I believe that Hokage Sama stated that we had a say while you do not, so please, sit down and stop acting as though you are still their sensei because you are not. You have no right to say that you don't believe they are ready, because how would you know? They haven't been your students for quite a while now, but I on the other hand am their sensei and I believe that they are ready. The room fell silent, and the academy teacher slowly exhaled a breath he had been suppressing before lifting his chin a little and sitting down again. After a little more silence, the Hokage said, I have a low-level C rank here that I deem you fit for completing. Before anyone could say anything, he raised his hand and silenced them all, saying, it is a simple escort mission. You will be required to protect the client on his travels back home to the Land of Waves and accompany him until he finishes his job. Your client is a master bridge builder from the Land of Waves and needs to return to his project there. Do you understand? Iruka, if you could please get the client. The man in question asked again after receiving nods from the team and a smile from the Uzumaki. He glared at the Jounin sensei before getting up to go get the client. Shortly after, he came back with a man who had the skin complexion of leather and looked to be in his late 40s. The man, or client, completely drained his cheap looking sake bottle without leaving a drop behind. After he was done, he took his time examining each team member. His appearance caused astonishment among the 3 genin. Were they meant to keep this guy safe? After he finished speaking, everyone in the room except the client and the victim counted down from 5. Gah! These 3 little snot-nosed brats are supposed to protect me? I don't even believe they're ninja. I mean, look at the one in the middle. He's a little pipsqueak, he exclaimed. Hey, the blonde genin said, stomping his foot while clenching his hand at his side. Before long, the group had left the tower and went their separate ways. Avoiding contact with the civilians, Naruto moved stealthily through the streets of Konoha. When he eventually arrived at the opposite side of the town, he slipped through the maintenance door into a dilapidated apartment building. He started to jog up the stairs and eventually got to his level. After inserting the key into the lock, he glanced around the landing briefly before going inside. Okay, first C-rank mission tomorrow. What to pack, what to pack. He couldn't stop laying out a sigh as he surveyed his compact apartment. Do you think you could help us out here, Rama? Before he got a response, he heard a snort. You idiot, get your scrolls. The boy followed his tenant's helpful suggestion and rolled his eyes. Gee, thanks. Naruto gathered clothing, a few random weapons, and a few cups of instant ramen on his way to his room. He then dumped everything on his bedroll, proceeded to his bookshelf, and started to move around. By the time he discovered his empty storage scrolls, he had nearly thrown everything on the ground, but he ignored it and went to work. What am I missing, I wonder? After tapping his chin, he fled the room and returned shortly after carrying additional ramen cups in his arms. Shortly afterward, the boy took a step back and marveled at his handiwork of securing his possessions. 3 of Team 7's 4 members were already awake when the sun rose the following day. Kakashi had just left his position at the memorial stone, while Sakura and Sasuke were already packing their belongings in preparation for their mission. The final participant, Uzumaki Naruto, remained in bed in an uncomfortable mess, still bound in his sheets. Sasuke and Sakura were waiting for the final 2 members of their team and their client at the main gates of Konoha when the clock struck 6:30 a.m. With hope in her eyes, the girl with the pink hair turned to face the Uchiha and asked, So, Sasuke, are you excited about getting a C-rank mission? She smiled as she waited for a response and encouraged him, saying, Sasuke, did you hear what I said? HN. The young kunoichi looked down at her feet and stepped away after receiving the answer. The two looked up after a few minutes of silence when they heard crunching footsteps on the gravel. Their client, who was holding a bottle of sake once more, was the owner of the footsteps. What's up with him drinking so early? The 2 genins thought about it. Following a series of sympathetic nods, the 3 of them fell into an awkward silence. Your air sensei just took off, said something about that little blonde brat. Told me to just wait here with you. Silently snoozing, utterly unaware of the outside world, Naruto was unaware that someone had entered his home. To the Jounin's dismay, the intruder, his sensei, came down the narrow hallway and then slid open the bedroom door just enough to let the view of the genin still sleeping stretched out on his bed. Before heading back down the hall into the open kitchen and living room and starting to pack Naruto's mission bag, the intruder took a quick look at the alarm clock next to the bed. When he was finished, he placed the pack over his shoulder and returned to the boy's bedroom, where he was still wearing the white pajama pants that showed many bowls of ramen and had his bed hat securely on his head. Sweating at the sight of the boy, the man proceeded over a sloppy stack of old and new clothing on the far side of the room, gathering up a few sets and shoving them into the pack while giggling evilly. He then closed the pack and approached Naruto. The boy in front of him snorted loudly after a few moments of reflection, then rolled onto his stomach, bottom up. What a fool. It's clear you won't be waking up anytime soon. With that thought, the man rolled the boy over before carefully picking him up and placing him over his shoulder. Humph, oh well, it's your own fault, Naruto. After making sure everything was comfortable, he locked the door behind him and left the apartment. The Hokage joyfully made his way through Konoha's now crowded streets before arriving at the front gates, where his client and team were waiting for him. Because of the person on his shoulder, they were all looking at him curiously. The Hokage began to enter the gates and turned to face everyone, saying, Don't worry about Naruto, at least he's here to start the mission. Well, what are you waiting for? A formal invitation. After walking for what seemed like an hour but was actually only half an hour, Naruto began to shift in his sleep, which caused the Hokage to stop and lay the boy down on the ground. He then gave the signal for everyone else to stop as well. The boy continued to sleep and began to twitch, utterly oblivious to his audience. His team was startled by an inhumane growl that escaped his throat, followed by more violent twitches before his eyes opened and he sat up, his arms immediately moving over his body as if to check for fatalities. The boy's eyes widened as his breathing calmed down and he realized where he was, or more accurately, where he wasn't. The bright blue eyes looked up at the voice's owner, shock visible on his face. Good morning, Naruto. Would you care for some breakfast? Because unfortunately we don't have any due to us being on a mission. Unless if you want a ration bar. I'm not getting one out of my pack, so if you want you can have this one. The ration bar was held out to him, but he didn't even notice. Well, I wouldn't eat it either. I think it's been in my vest for a few years, probably more. Sensei. Did you go into my apartment? His voice became slightly higher at the end and after receiving a nod he continued in a low whisper, But that's impossible. You should be. Noticing the funny looks he was getting, he stood up and turned to his sensei. Where are my clothes? And my scrolls? The scarecrow pointed to a rattled bag over his shoulder and said, Here. The boy hurried forward, grabbed the bag, tore it open, and pulled out all the contents before stopping motionless with a frown on his face, as if he was listening to something. But that's not my bag. I had scrolls prepared. There were 2 of them sitting on the floor by the door. Oh no, please tell me the scrolls are in there, he said, turning back to their sensei and sighing. I'm sorry for not being up on time, sensei. I should be grateful you grabbed stuff for me. He should put on some clothes, the older man said, ruffling his hair. Well, turn around, the smaller boy said, nodding to the others, but they didn't. Despite Sakura's incredibly uncomfortable appearance, his blonde hair went crazy and completely unmanageable when he removed his hat with a pout. His hair never looked that messy during the day, so everyone wondered how he manages to tame it. Fine then. The impoverished boy then put on a white shirt featuring the Uzumaki swirl on the back. After glaring at everyone, he took orange shorts from the bag and replaced his ramen pajama pants with them. He put on his shoes and then turned to face his sensei. You suck, sensei. You realize these clothes are from when I was 8, right? The older man simply grinned and ruffled his hair at that. Naruto pouted once more, demonstrating that he was equally as grown up as an 8-year-old. All right everyone, let's continue. The blonde boy chose to ignore the words and carry on in silence, while the pink-haired girl sighed and left the attention. Naruto, you're such a baka. I mean, who even fits into their clothes from when they were 8? Even then surely you would buy new clothes, you're so gross. After a little more than an hour of walking together, they came upon a tiny puddle. Few would give it much thought, but after considering that it hadn't rained in a little more than a week and that nothing else was wet, Kakashi subtly indicated that his team should form a basic formation in order to protect Tazuna. One Jounin walked apart from the others, remaining silent while the other 2 moved. From the corner of his eye, Kakashi noticed movement inside. The 2 massive figures in the tree appeared to be more than just bandits based on their physiques. After the figures exchanged glances and sprang forward, a chain that connected them was revealed. The 2 Jounin and the client were sent into shock as they ran, wrapped themselves around the Jounin, and pulled the chain, tearing him in 2. The 2 beasts turned to face Sasuke, who had just jolted out of his shock and was urging Sakura to draw a kunai and stand in front of Tazuna as Sasuke prepared to fight. The 2 attackers advanced on Sasuke at a frightening rate, and one of them raised his weapon as the other one abruptly stopped and grabbed hold of the heavy chain, successfully swinging his teammate around to kill Sakura and Sasuke with a single blow. Unaware of what to anticipate, Sasuke held his ground when the movement abruptly stopped following a yellow flash. Gozu, what are you doing, you idiot? Imaizu, look out, said the one now known as Gozu as he turned to face the other, but it was too late. Their chain line went slack as Maizu fell to the ground. It was none other than the Jounin Hitaki Kakashi behind him. Too late, Imaizu, look out. Their chain line went slack as Maizu fell to the ground. It was none other than the Jounin Hitaki Kakashi behind him. He quickly knocked Gozu unconscious before tying them both to a tree with their own chains. Naruto, get up off the ground. Tazuna, I believe we need to talk. His voice became quite serious as he addressed the elder man. Those 2 weren't just bandits, you see. They were Chunin level missing nin from Kirigakure. The demon brothers Gozu and Maizu. Now, why someone like them be after a humble bridge builder? Well, you see, I haven't been completely honest with you. You see, my village, we can't afford much, and a C rank was the best we could do. Most of our money is going towards the bridge and to Tagato. It was necessary to lie Hitaki-san. Please, my village needs this. The conversation was interrupted by a sorrowful moan. Naruto, who was still curled up on the ground, was the center of attention. As he crossed his arms awaiting a response, the Uchiha sneered, Dobi, in case you haven't noticed, our sensei and our client are having a very important conversation right now. When he received nothing but silence, he approached the slouched figure and, with a smirk on his face, gently tapped him in the ribs with his foot. You're not hurt, are you? Avoid touching me. Naruto had to extend his right arm to the side in order to balance after Sasuke had pushed him. Sasuke was unaware that Naruto had been harmed in reality. It hurts so bad. His voice was hardly audible, but it was easy to hear the pain in it as he said, yeah, actually, I did get hurt. Sasuke and the others became aware of the blood on his arm, the ground, and the metallic odor in the air at that point. Rama, I know you're there, the boy said, letting out an inaudible breath. Naruto, where exactly is the wound? Kakashi hurried to Naruto's side as Sasuke stepped back in shock. It was fairly obvious, but he asked it anyway to get a response, and when he didn't, the man became agitated. Naruto, this is no time to be playing games. Can you roll onto your side for me? Once more, no response was found, and absolutely no movement. The boy's breathing had stopped. Oh kid. I told you it was reckless and now look at you. The floor, which was uneven and composed of concrete with a thin layer of water on it, was a mix of grays, and the room smelled of stale air. A dim light on one side of the room produced a hazy glow that illuminated the entire area, effectively revealing a figure standing there. The ruthless voice reverberated throughout the space, eventually reaching the silhouette's ears, who then moved forward. Rama. The faint light brightened as the tiny voice spoke. Rama. I don't know why but I know kid, I saw everything. What are you going to do? Naruto, a tiny figure in his mindscape, stood in front of Kurama, the Kyuubi no Yoko, and the demon fox herself. His big blue eyes were filled with unshed tears as he looked up at the large cage in front of him. Am I going to die? On the other side of the cage bars, a big set of eyes opened, revealing slit crimson eyes. You could kid. But that's your choice, if you stay here you will. But if you wake up you will only suffer the consequences of your actions. Rama, can't you just heal me, like all my other injuries? Kid, you've lost your eyes. I can heal flesh and organs with minimal or no problems, but eyes are more intricate. It's like your brain, even if I was to heal them they wouldn't be back 100%, you would lose your eye color and they'd be plain white like a Hyuga's, but obviously without the Byakugan. Kid, everything you see would still be blurry. But I would see, it would eventually get you killed. The boy sagged. The big fox in the cage began to shrink in size, changing into a humanoid shape. So, either I stay here and die or go back and stay completely blind, or have you heal my vision to a pathetic attempt? He asked. Without looking up, the boy asked, Uzumaki Naruto, are you giving up? I won't let you give up, young man. You have a long promising life ahead of you, and if you give up now just because you jumped in to protect the Uchiha, then, honestly, I regret saying you were worthy of being my host. When the boy heard those words, his head snapped up and his eyes widened in surprise. After moving forward, Naruto opened his mouth to say, Rama. I don't want it to come to that. I have had 3 Uzumakis as my hosts and so far you are the most interesting. Naruto. Kid, I can help you one other way. But I need your full permission. Kid, I need to leave your body. That alone will kill you. You will die but you will come back. What do you mean? How will that help me? Kid, shut up. It will help you because I will return to your body. Not through a seal, not by force, but with both of our consent. Kid, if I do this I won't just be a demon encaged inside you. I will be the demon within you. Before the blonde Jinchuriki looked up and met the demon's eyes, they were silent. What do I do? She asked. Put some chakra into the seal and wake up. Leave the rest to me. Even though it was fairly obvious, Kakashi hurried to Naruto's side and asked, Naruto, where exactly is the wound? In hopes of receiving some sort of response. However, when he didn't, the man became agitated. Naruto, this is no time to be playing games. Can you roll onto your side for me? Once more, no response was found, and absolutely no movement. The boy's breathing had stopped. The man immediately began treating the boy with the fundamental first aid skills he possessed. Before beginning chest compressions, the Hokage checked his airway and pulse again after rolling him onto his back and straightening him out. Sasuke, can you take over? He asked, gesturing for his other 2 students to approach. Sasuke paused before assuming control. After extracting a scroll from his vest and opening it, Kakashi removed a pack of sterile cloths and an antiseptic mixture. Once everything was ready, the man began cleaning the boy's face of blood and carefully covered his eyes and nose with a patch swab. The scene was unsettling. Blood was all over the place. It covered the entire floor, landed on the boy's hair, and spread to Sasuke and Kakashi's hands and clothes. At first she hesitated, but then she started working right away. Sakura, can you pass me the bandage gauze and water? She asked. To get rid of some of the blood, Kakashi wet the boy's hair. Sasuke, how is it going? The man's visible eye mirrored the boy's worried voice as he said, Sensei, I don't think it's working. I've checked pulse but it's not coming back. The Hokage skillfully wrapped the bandage around the boy's head and proceeded with the CPR, pushing past his point of exhaustion. Well, we will wrap the wound up and I will take over for you. While their sensei worked tirelessly and never gave up, the 2 genin sat to the side. Hokage-san. Naruto has been out for over half an hour. I don't think continuing will change anything. I can't let him go. Oh Kami, what have I done? Please, please give him back to me. The man's arms were covered in blood, and he had perspiration on his brow. His visible eye was filled with so many emotions that it was difficult to choose just one. Kakashi pulled another scroll from his vest and sagged back. This time, it was a cloak rather than medical supplies. I apologize, Minato-sensei. He let out a broken sob, not caring that his teammates could hear him, saying, I'm sorry, Naru. I should have been there for you as a child. I was meant to be your brother. He pulled the cloak up over the little boy's body and covered his face with his hands. Naruto, if I could give you my life to bring you back I would. You may never forgive me but I'm sorry. You could tell he was crying even though there were no sounds. Remorse crumpled Tazuna's face. I am to blame for this. I should have declined the Jounin team's request. I was avaricious and self-centered. Sasuke appeared torn and was on his knees. His frown had vanished, and he had stopped considering Naruto to be a dobe. It was as if he had lost his family again. Sakura appeared to be on the verge of vomiting. Her sensei's words caused a few tears to trickle down her cheeks. Now that she knew what she needed to do for her future, she gazed down at Naruto's blood on her hands. Sakura could not allow another person to die. The cloak then began to move. It rose up and then sank back down, but only a little. It was first noticed by Sasuke. Sensei looked. Slowly, the Hokage lifted his head to see what the Uchiha was discussing. Naruto, can you hear me? The man asked. His eyes immediately filled with shock. He pulled down the cloak and then put his fingers on the boy's neck. There was a slight pulse, but it was still there. As the blonde Jinchuriki disappeared in front of the cage bars, the demon grinned pitifully. The boy was unaware that everyone on his team was saddened by his passing and that they had attempted to revive him. The boy left a chakra on the seal, which Kurama began to shape, causing it to glow and move. The seal that was now on the bars had changed to allow the Kyuubi to leave, but doing so came at a price. It did this for a few minutes before turning into an intensely bright light and then vanishing. The boys' lives were at stake. Though the idea was unsettling, it wouldn't matter in the end because Kurama would merge with the boy and return to him as part of their plan. Although Kurama had not informed the Uzumaki, the demon would be free to depart from his body whenever they so desired after the merging was finished. Kyuubi herself would have to pay for that, though, because the demon's chakra would remain in the boy's body but be available to both of them. This implied that the demon would be teleported back into the Uzumaki if she strayed too far from him. The animal remained in the cage for a few more minutes, seemingly anticipating something or someone. She received what she had been anticipating. An extremely similar man, who appeared to be an adult version of the blonde boy, was standing where the young blonde had been not too long ago. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage who had sealed the beast in here 12 years prior, was the man standing there. Ah, Namikaze, what a pleasure. Before you go to fix the seal, don't waste your time. Your kit willingly placed the chakra on the seal to open it. The demon began to clarify the situation. Minato, your son has been severely injured in combat. He was struck in the face by a poisoned blade causing severe lacerations rendering his eyes useless and beyond any chance of repair. He jumped in to stop an attack on his fellow team member, Uchiha. We spoke about what will happen and he agreed. He released chakra into seal because I'm going to leave. The man's posture was harsh and unforgiving. But that will kill him. Does he know that? He asked. He was prepared to permanently imprison the Kyuubi by resealing him if he felt it was appropriate. He would much rather the Kyuubi remain imprisoned than run the risk of influencing Naruto's thoughts. I know it will, and he knows it will as well. He has already died today in Namikaze. He had a decision to make. Either remain here in his mindscape and we both die, but he instantly dismissed that. I could heal him to the extent of having a pathetic excuse of vision which could cause his death later, or he could go back and stay blind. The last option was that he could release me and die just to come back to life due to me merging with him. The Kyuubi interrupted the man before he could say anything more. Before you speak again, Namikaze, I know of your predicament and that is why I offer you a body. He isn't going to be able to come to his mindscape now or for quite some time after this happens. He is too weak. In fact, if he was to come here he would become comatose. Therefore I offer you a body to come into the world with me. You can still speak to him then. What happened to you, Kyuubi? What happened to the demon that picked up on negative emotions? The blonde man was silent for a moment before Is that what you did? Took advantage of his weak state? Are you playing with him? How dare you? I will seal you back up with all I have, you demon. Kurama glanced at him and said, I'm sorry but I can't let you do that. What happened to me, you ask? I was sealed into one of the most amazing humans I have ever met. He was and still is misunderstood but has the abilities to lock away the negative emotions he gets from others into a place where I can hardly touch them. Even if I believe that he is strong enough to avoid its pull. I have offered myself to him so that he may gain back his sight. I'm ready to offer myself, willingly, to a mere mortal. There is one thing I didn't tell him though. He is under the impression that by me merging with him all he is going to get is my sight. The creature let out something laughed. Namikaze, do you know what will happen? Well, you'd be merging with him. He'd gain all of your heightened senses, and I don't know but I'm assuming that if your chakra is going to be in him directly instead of just being in a seal his body would need to adjust. Yes, that is true. He will get all my senses, and yes his body may change, but even I'm not too sure about how that will turn out. What concerns me the most is something else. Namikaze, do you know what gender I am? When the blonde looked up at the demon, his eyes grew wide. The demon smirked and then shrank in size and changed shape once more. After a minute, a stunning woman with blood-red hair and black undertones appeared. Her face appeared to have been meticulously carved by the gods themselves. The woman flashed a sly smile with pointed teeth, and her eyes were glowing with joy. Namikaze, I can manage to create a clone for you to use until the merge is complete. When I leave I'll take you with me but you will not be able to return. I will wake him up, but you will have to wait a moment until everything wears off. Do not worry about who else is around Namikaze, otherwise you will lose your chance to say what you want. The big gates opened as she extended her grasp. Take my hands, Namikaze. Since none of them believed what had happened, Kakashi was in a state of hysteria. The boy was clinically dead for a while, and they tried everything they could to save him without knowing medical jitsu. At last, when they were at a loss for what to do, the boy began to breathe. Without assistance. Not a thing. When Naruto used a royal flush to counter the Shinigami's low hand, it seemed as though fate was playing tricks. Now, Naruto's heartbeat was normalizing and his chest was rising and falling steadily. The Hokage turned his attention to the demon brothers after learning that the boy was okay. After settling the group, Kakashi decided it would be best to put them into an induced coma and seal them away to be taken back to Konoha. When he had taken them out, he had only made them unconscious. The two students moved into a position where they could watch Naruto while keeping watch over him and the client. Sasuke, Sakura, keep an eye on Naruto and Tazuna. We don't want to drop our guard any more than what we already have. Their sensei collected chakra in the tips of his fingers while they were doing that, then struck Maizu with a pressure point. A jolt went through the Chunnin's body as soon as his fingers touched, and then his head sagged. He did it again on Gozu, gathering chakra in the tips of his fingers. He swiftly got to work sealing them away after finishing Gozu by drawing out a scroll. After completing the tiresome task, he straightened up and dusted himself of the invisible dirt before returning to the group. When Naruto made a tiny sound, it had been a few minutes since he had resumed breathing. He said, "Hand," but the group barely heard it because it was so quiet. Crossing his arms and staring at the boy on the ground, the bridge builder asked, "Hotaki-san, do you think he wants your hand or is he dreaming?" He was mistaken in noticing that the boy had once again stopped breathing. It was just past noon when the silver-haired man looked up at the sky and said, "Nah, we probably didn't even hear it right. I think we should probably start moving if we want to make it to your home before dark, Tazuna. Also, we're continuing, but what about the boy's health? We can let him rest when we are there. I'm just hoping we don't run into any more trouble." The two had turned their backs on the three genin while they were talking. Sakura and Sasuke, who were also fascinated by the fact that they were going on, failed to notice Naruto. The chakra that was growing around him at his stomach went unnoticed by the four of them, until the chakra turned foul, that is. When Kakashi became aware of the feeling, he stopped talking and slowly turned around, which made the others follow suit. They were shocked by what they saw. The boy had two different colored chakras all over him, red and blue. Beside him, a clone suddenly came to life, and the blue chakra began to seep into it before the clone began to gradually change in appearance. Until it was bubbling like lava, the red chakra that was sleeping out of Naruto's stomach grew thicker and thicker. At last, Kakashi spoke up as it began to change and take shape, telling everyone to return and be ready for anything. In order to reach about 6 feet in height, the red chakra began to compress itself upward. At that point, shapes began to show more clearly what could be considered a figure. Skin began to form around the bottom as it began to split about halfway and take on a solid shape. There were noticeable curves above the legs. Before long, it was very clear what it was. It had a feminine shape. A female. As she raised her head, it solidified as well. She flicked it back, sending chakra out in the form of hair that reached her bottom and remained the same color as the chakra. The clone had now assumed its new form after the blue chakra had completed its sleep. Now that his hair had grown and his clothes had changed, the boy's clone looked more like a man. His eyes were sad as he glanced up at the group watching. Nothing else happened until his eyes met Kakashi's. As soon as he said, "Sensei," the two genin awoke from their reverie and were shocked to see a familiar man kneeling over their teammate. She turned to the Namikaze and asked, "You ready?" in a dark voice that was completely out of character for her stunning appearance, but the women paid them no attention. Almost immediately after the late Hokage nodded once and met her gaze, the woman leaned in Naruto's direction. The silence was broken by demonic mutterings, and the woman forced Naruto to face her by placing her hands on either side of his head. Once more, the red chakra began to leak out, this time forming a circle of runes on the ground around them. Unaware of what was going on, Sakura and Sasuke had stepped back even further, dropping their kunai where they had been. While Tazuna had fully absorbed the effects of the chakra exposure and had long since fainted, Kakashi had been stunned and unsure of what to do. The woman's muttering grew louder and louder until it abruptly stopped as the chakra markings grew and took shape. From the outer ring inward toward the center, the markings on the ground ignited and burned, and as the flames struck Naruto's body, both he and the woman caught fire. Naruto was terrified. Everything was dark, and he was unable to sense his heartbeat or his chest rising and falling. In the back of his mind, he recalled that meeting Kurama was the last time he had experienced this. He had feared many people after the terrible experience, but he would not have gained a family member and would not have learned nearly as much as he did if it had not occurred. Rewind on October 10th, everyone was outside having a good time. Today was the 5th anniversary of the day that Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, vanquished Kyuubi no Yoko. The majority of the celebration was held in the open spaces close to the Hokage monument, where all of the civilians had shut down their stores and relocated their vendors. Both ninja and civilians were able to celebrate. Over the past few months, a wide variety of sake had been stocked, and there were countless food options available in big quantities. The entire town was vibrant, with lanterns, streamers, and buntings adorning the buildings. Everyone was grinning and laughing as children ran around having fun. To go and enjoy themselves with friends and family was the reason for the early dismissal of the academy and civilian schools. Children were given free rein by their parents. For an annual fox hunting excursion, civilians were permitted to leave the village during the day. Ninjas even joined in on the fun. Every ninja who wasn't on active duty was dressed casually. The freedom to kick back was even granted to the on-duty ninja. Genin didn't have to go on D ranks because missions had been paused for the day, and the only employees working actively were the gatekeepers and Anbu guards. In addition, there were people in the Hokage Tower and the hospital. Children had gone to bed when nightfall arrived, and many adults had been drinking for hours on end with no intention of sobering up until it was absolutely necessary. People were able to mentally sober up to the point where they knew what they were doing when 11 p.m. rolled around. A group of civilians and ninja of all ranks came together with a plan, as they had done each year. They always had the same plan, but they never got it done. They thought they were on the right track. Rather than simply defeating the demon, their goal was to kill it and complete the Yondaime's task. The Sandaime Hokage, who had been restored following the Yondaime's demise, was always the one who did it. The victim was always taken out of the village for 3 days, from the 9th to the 11th, by the old Hokage. This implied that during the festivities, the Hokage briefly left the village. This year was no exception. Naruto left the village on the 9th to avoid being seen by the Hokage and a few other people on the 10th, who then came back on the 11th after all the commotion had subsided. That was the plan, anyway. Bright blue eyes met the Anbu and said, "Inu-san, can I see the town?" Now they stood in the garden of the estate of the fire daimyo and his wife, Madame Shijimi. There was a glow in the distance that revealed Konoha's location. A young man wearing a dog mask said, "Naruto, don't you want to stay here and celebrate your birthday with everyone?" He was dressed in the traditional Anbu uniform, which included arm guards, strapped sandals, and a basic blue suit with a gray flak jacket. In addition, he had his Anbu tattoo on his left bicep and was wearing plated gloves that reached his arms. A bandage was wrapped around his right glove. He also had a sword strapped to his back, and his mask was designed to look like a dog's face, complete with black and red markings around the mouth, eyes, and sides. Thus the name, Inu. Why don't we go join the daimyo in this celebration? After letting out a sigh, the young blonde trailed the Anbu to the crowd. He wanted to return to the village, but he was content with them and they didn't make fun of him. He only wanted to watch how they celebrated this one time. He achieved his goal. Naruto left the group without anyone noticing while his Anbu guard was speaking with Madame Shijimi. Back at the estate, the boy spread his scent everywhere and ran as fast as he could. He was aware that he was running out of time before the Anbu found him. He would arrive home in an hour because he was aware that the ride on the back of the Anbu had taken 30 minutes. He knew he could do it, even though there wasn't much time. Inu.san was, after all, a sloth. The young boy soon wished he had never gone back to the village. He wished he knew the reason behind the villagers' disapproving gaze. He was really scared of it. Why hadn't he been given that look by those at the daimyos? Why was he being harmed by everyone here? The pain was excruciating as some threw objects and others struck him. Gigi was where? Inu was where? And whose eyes were those red ones? Finish the flashback, Naruto. Wake up. The woman's muttering grew louder and louder until it abruptly stopped as the chakra markings grew and took shape. From the outer ring inward toward the center, the markings on the ground ignited and burned, and as the flames struck Naruto's body, both he and the woman caught fire. The man beside them briefly experienced panic before it subsided, and he hurriedly assessed Naruto as best he could without making physical contact before getting to his feet. As he stood up, Team 7's eyes followed his movements. A tall, tanned man stood before them. In addition to his spiky blonde hair and bright blue eyes, he had Hidayate on his forehead and jaw. Length bangs that framed his face on either side. The man was wearing a leaf green flak jacket, blue sandals, and a typical Konoha Jounin uniform with 2 bands on each sleeve. The Genins were particularly drawn to a long, white, short-sleeved haori with orange flames adorning the edges and the obvious kanji for 4th Hokage written vertically down the back. He was well known throughout Konoha. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, was in front of Team 7. Out of worry and paranoia, Kakashi used his Sharingan to check the man's chakra even though he had known who it was since the clone had first changed. Hearing his voice again made Kakashi's heart ache more than either of them had anticipated. Hello Kashi-kun. I'd love to talk but I'm not here for you. With concern evident in his eyes, Minato turned back to face the boy on the ground. A layer of the flaming chakra was still covering Naruto, but it was slowly fading away, taking with it some of the bandages and the boy's clothes. His body was thrashing and twitching in horrifying ways, and that was what worried them the most. The boy opened his mouth in a silent scream as the group watched him, and then they all winced as the sound of breaking bones filled the clearing. Unable to see the pain on her teammates' faces, Sakura had turned her head. Sensei. What's happening? What is this? Kakashi simply shook his head, unable to bring himself to respond. Since he had no idea what was going on, he was genuinely afraid. In front of their eyes, his body grew about a foot longer and his waistline became slightly thinner. His hair also began to grow, soon surpassing the Yondaime's length before it began to change color and pile up on top of itself like a halo. At the roots, it turned blood red from brilliant blonde. The changes weren't limited to these. The fact that the bone and tissue surrounding his eyes were healing at a startling rate caught their attention the most, and all they could do was observe as Naruto's facial features grew more defined and rather graceful. As new eyes grew in the sockets, Naruto let out a blood-curdling scream before anyone could fully comprehend his appearance. A pair of crimson eyes replaced the dead tissue, and the only sign of his prior injury was a nasty scar that extended across his eyes and nose from ear to ear. Minato knelt down as the last of the chakra began to seep into his skin. As he nodded awkwardly, the boy on the ground gasped, Naruto, Naruto, can you hear me? Naruto. Wake up. Another nod. Do you know who I am? You probably just thought that I was the Yondaime. Well yes I am, but that's not what I meant. Naruto, you hold a place in my heart that nobody could ever replace. I'm not really here right now, I'm just a chakra memory using a clone. Naruto, I wanted to say that I'm proud of you and that you should never forget that. He cracked a joke. The boy's eyes widened and he attempted to move his arm towards the man who was now identified as his father. You know, when your name was chosen, your mother insisted it was after the ramen ingredient. I told her that I wanted it to be after the hero in Jiraiya Sensei's novel, The Tale of Gutsy Ninja. In the end, we agreed to disagree, but in any case, it's Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze. Minato knelt beside Naruto and moved to his side, taking his hand as he went on. Naruto, I assume that you already know what happened 12 years ago. Well, I need to tell you anyway that the Kyuubi didn't die but was instead sealed away, into you. And I know you already know that, I'm just verifying, I guess. Naruto, you don't have all of Kurama. You are not the only Jinchuriki for Kurama. You have the yang half and I have the yin. Oto-san. Naruto, I want you to work alongside the Kyuubi. I know you already have made a brotherly and sisterly relationship between you, but please, I want you to become. Oto-san, I know you don't have to tell me. Naruto. My boy, when you return to the leaf you tell the old man Hokage that you want your heritage. You now know who your father is. Your Okazan was the last Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. She was a beautiful woman, as funny as it is to say this, but you have her eye shape. And you had my color. Your mother was told that love was the only way to tame the nine tails and overcome its hate. She was told that by the Jinchuriki before her Mito Uzumaki, but neither of them succeeded. You on the other hand have. Your mother was well known in the village, and it surprises me no one made the connection between the three of us. Uzumaki Kushina, the red hot blooded habanero, never call her tomato though. I'm sorry for not being there for you, Naru. I'm sure your mother looks down upon you as your guardian angel as well. We both loved you dearly. After a brief period of comfortable silence, the Yondaime began to feel weak. Naruto, I don't have much time left. His voice was weak and quiet, but it reverberated throughout the clearing as he said, I always looked up to you, Yano. I still do, even more so now that I know you're my Oto-san. After pausing to take a trembling breath, he continued, saying, Okazan sounds beautiful as well. I will definitely look more into her and pester Gigi more than I do now about you both. I want you to know that I love you and forgive you for not being there. I wasn't alone. I had Gigi and Inu. Over there. I also had Tuchi and Ayame at Ichiraku. I also had Ruka, Sensei, and Rama. I don't plan on letting any of them go. Naruto then broke down in tears. He stepped forward and embraced his son. I love you, my son, and I'm so proud of you. You have a big heart, and an even bigger soul. He drew back, gazing into his son's eyes, then grinned. Naruto, I will never leave your side. Everything had been heard and seen by the four individuals standing off to the side. Shortly after waking up, the bridge builder witnessed the exchange. Sakura was sobbing in private. She didn't despise Naruto as much as she appeared to, despite what everyone believed, and this broke her heart. However, she secretly didn't want to accept it and preferred to focus solely on the fact that the Kyuubi was inside of him. On the other hand, Sasuke was taken aback. He never imagined that the Dobi would have such well-known, powerful, and intelligent parents. As another orphan, he was troubled that the boy had discovered who his parents were, only to have them disappear once more. Kakashi took the entire scene very personally. He couldn't help but feel ashamed of himself when he saw his sensei and second father figure standing there. He ought to have supported Naruto more, but he distanced himself from the boy following the incident on the boy's 5th birthday. He glanced at Kakashi and grinned just before he ran out of chakra, giving the impression that Minato knew exactly what he was thinking. Also, Naruto, make sure you look after your older brother. He needs you more than he likes to admit. After that, Minato leaned forward and gave Naruto a quick kiss on the forehead before disappearing with a pop. All he could think about was his sensei's final words. He needs you more than he likes to admit. Kakashi knew this to be true, but he would never say it aloud, as his sensei intended. Sincerely, he was happy that his sensei had said it. All he could hope for was forgiveness. Kakashi was willing to fail the team when he was informed that he would be the boy's sensei in order to avoid having to be close to the boy he had once thought of as a brother. Although he hadn't intended for the boy to recognize him as the person he once was, it appears that he did. However, Naruto didn't seem to care. Instead, he encouraged Kakashi to take charge and become the instructor he ought to have been from the start. Inu, Naruto's bodyguard and Anbu captain, had left, and Team 7 leader Hitaki Kakashi had taken his place. Before swiftly using a jutsu, he gave the order for his 2 other genin to assist Naruto in standing up. Kachiyose no Jutsu. A tiny cloud of smoke and a ninken emerged, but Kakashi cut them off before they could say anything, demonstrating how serious the situation was. Kakashi put 2 scrolls into the pug's jacket before speaking, saying, Pakun, I need you to run as fast as you can to Hokage Sama and request Asuma's team. Those scrolls were the Chunnin we fought. Return with them at full speed. The pug looked around, taking in as much of the scene as he could before fading away. Even though Sasuke and Sakura were exhausted, they made an effort to keep as far away from Naruto as they could, which made the scene rather embarrassing. Kakashi stood up and turned back to the group to see that Naruto was now standing with their assistants. The moment someone said, "Nay, I think I'm going to throw up," everyone moved away, including the 2 people who helped him. Naruto collapsed to his knees. His face was troubled as he gazed up at them. Everyone released a breath they had been holding when the speaker said, "Well, it's nice to know you all care so much, and for your information the feeling is gone." At that moment, Naruto became aware of all the hair surrounding him. He picked up the long strands and stared at them in disbelief, saying, "What the, is my hair different now? I wonder if anyone else has." "It's okay, Naruto, we will figure everything out soon, so hurry up and get on. We do still have to make it to Tazuna's." Kakashi walked forward and knelt down in front of the boy. He looked over his shoulder and grinned, saying, "It's alright, Naruto, we will figure everything out soon, now hurry up and get on. We do still have to make it to Tazuna's." Naruto got to his feet on his own before stumbling and falling onto Kakashi's back. The man just repositioned him so they were both comfortable and then stood. Grinning, Naruto simply put his arms around his sensei's neck. Rewind. A silver-haired Anbu ran through Konoha's streets, jumping to and from buildings. There was a little child with blonde hair on the Anbu's back, and there was only joy on his face. The onlookers were unaware that a similar expression was set beneath the Anbu's mask. Finish the flashback. He deliberately took off at a walking pace in order to buy time for the backup, despite his statement that, "Alright, let's move on, we've lost a lot of time thanks to this unpredictable knucklehead." Kakashi also intended to use this time to address his concerns regarding the Chunnin attack, and he once more requested the truth from Tazuna regarding the mission's circumstances. Tazuna informed them as they made their way to the town that a shipping tycoon named Gato had seized control of the Land of Waves and had essentially bankrupted the entire populace, forcing them to rely on him. Additionally, he informed them that the construction of a bridge to the mainland, which might make Gato's shipping company obsolete, was the only way to revive the economy. Gato did not want that to occur, so he employed shinobi and bandit gangs to maintain control and prevent the bridge from being completed. As you can see, if I was to be killed, the villagers would lose all hope and stop construction on the bridge. Kakashi's thoughts kept returning to the lump on his back, which was now sleeping, as he listened to the story. He was unable to get rid of the amusing impression that Naruto was more than what they had witnessed. They were still in the dark about what had happened, and Kakashi assumed Naruto was either unaware of it or, if he was keeping it to himself. They encountered a grumpy elderly man who operated a little fishing shack when they arrived at the waters dividing Nami no Kuni from Hai no Kuni. The group settled down and took a break after Tazuna stepped forward to negotiate crossing but was informed that they would have to wait until the fog covered the waters more before they could cross. Shortly after Kakashi put him down and the others shared water and rations, Naruto fell back to sleep. Tazuna simply sipped his sake. After a good hour, the man returned with a small boat that was barely large enough to accommodate everyone. After assisting his students and client onto the boat, Kakashi swiftly extended his senses and sensed the familiar chakras of his teammates and allies in the near distance. He grinned slightly as he got into the boat and took a seat. When they eventually reached the portion of the bridge that had been constructed thus far, their silence was broken. They had been traveling in silence, hiding in the mist they had been waiting for. Naruto's voice was unable to contain his shock. The man who had rented the boat hissed at the boy, effectively cutting him off, but not his or anyone else's voice. "Shut up. Why do you think we're traveling in silence, brat? We don't want to get caught." The boat's owner barely waited for them to disembark and retrieve their packs before they resumed their journey. How awful was it that everyone was like that here from Gato? The boys didn't argue, so Kakashi knelt down in front of him once more. "Okay, Naruto, hurry up and jump on. I don't want to take any risks after what happened, and with how much you've been sleeping since." After successfully surprising everyone and putting them on even higher guard, Naruto shifted on Kakashi's back and sent a kunai into a nearby bush. When it turned out to be nothing, Sakura yelled at him. The group continued on their way to Tazuna's house. Naruto chose to toss another kunai into a bush on the other side of the path rather than pay attention to Sakura. But this time, Sakura simply called him a fool rather than yelling. When he said, "But I swear there is something here, I don't know, I can just sense it," a rabbit emerged from the bush, half frightened. As soon as Sakura saw what it was, she hurried forward and apologized profusely to the rabbit for her teammates' idiotic actions. Kakashi noticed something odd about the rabbit while everyone was focused on her. Its fur was white. Sakura put the rabbit down after giving it a healing embrace, while Naruto stalked on their sensei's back. Naruto had just realized what Kakashi had realized a few moments earlier. "Hold on, sensei, this rabbit is white. It's a snow rabbit. Snow rabbits are only white during winter. It isn't winter. Everyone get down." Hiruzen was quietly observing all of his Anbu guards while seated behind his massive wooden desk. Even though he detested paperwork, he could honestly say that he was relieved that he wasn't forced to spend hours standing motionless while an elderly man pushed papers. Before he could pick up another piece of paper, he heard a little commotion on the other side of his door. He coughed dryly as he corrected his thoughts, "Not that I'm old." A scratching sound reached his ears as he was looking up, and Hiruzen motioned for the nearest Anbu to open the door. A tiny dog that was immediately recognized as Pakun, Kakashi's most reliable ninkin, rushed in. "Pakun, what's happened?" Since the pug didn't even mention his paw, Hiruzen immediately recognized the seriousness of the request when he said, "Hokage Sama, I am here on behalf of Kakashi with an urgent request for backup. Specially Asuma-san and his team." He then ordered an Anbu to locate and bring his son and his Jounin squad to him. Before he could take a long drag from his cigarette, Asuma pulled open the door and quickly surveyed the scene. Shikamaru was half asleep behind him, glancing at the pug that was now perched on the Hokage's desk as if he owned it. "Hokage-sama, what's wrong?" The kind of cute puppy caught Ino's attention, and she smiled slightly as she moved forward to join her fellow team members. "Pakun, please explain." He looked at each Jounin, but was a little put off by the third because the boy was staring at him like a piece of food, which made him want to reverse summon himself. "Kakashi summoned me and gave me strict orders to run here as fast as I could, request Asuma and his team, and then catch up with them as quickly as we can. I don't know everything, but Naruto was on the ground. Well, I think it was Naruto. Had red and blonde hair though and wasn't as scrawny. Anyway, they encountered Chunnin." With a gesture toward his vest, Hiruzen produced 2 scrolls and said, "Send these 2 to Ibiki." The team quickly started to head for the gates. After a brief inspection of the supplies, Asuma gave the all clear to leave. Concerned about what they might come across, the 3 Jounin followed Asuma and Pakun's pace. Their speed decreased over time, and they eventually came to a halt in a tiny clearing. There were clear indications of a fight and char marks in the dirt, despite the fact that some of the scene had been cleared. Pakun immediately got to work tracing the team's path before indicating that it was time to depart once more. "This is where Kakashi summoned me." Everyone was wondering where Team 7 was now and what they were going to face as they left. Kakashi had just moments before realized the same thing that Naruto had. As Kakashi himself fell to the ground, he yelled, "Everyone get down!" Naruto was forced to follow him. Kakashi instructed Naruto to release his grip and roll away as they struck the ground. A huge blade swung above their heads, slicing into a nearby tree. They saw a big, beastly man land on the handle of the blade. His forehead protector made it obvious that he was a Kiri missing nin, even though his lower face was bandaged. Kakashi rose to his feet and commanded the Jounin to form up in order to defend Tazuna, Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the mist. In response to Zabuza's words, Kakashi raised his Hite.8, exposing the Sharingan. "Hitaki Kakashi, the copycat ninja, the man who has copied over 1,000 jutsu. I look forward to killing you." "Ah, so I am worthy enough to see the Sharingan?" Sasuke stiffened when he heard Zabuza bring up the Sharingan, saying, "That's my clan's. Why does Sensei have it in one eye?" Naruto whispered, "What the hell is Sharingan?" Sasuke spoke up, sounding quite proud of his clan's Kekkei Genkei. The Sharingan is the Dojutsu Kekkei Genkei of the Uchiha clan. It holds the ability to read any genjutsu and ninjutsu, as well as chakra depending on which level you have. There is much more to the Sharingan too. You only scratch the surface of it, kid. It can also analyze a person's technique and copy it, hence why your sensei here has the name of a copycat. Even got him into our bingo book. Now enough talking, it's time to finish this. Zabuza successfully withdrew the sword from the tree by leaping back. Hidden mist jutsu. A dense fog materialized, obstructing their view and concealing its maker. "Sensei." Sakura's voice was filled with panic. Kakashi started to say, "Sakura, relax, if anything he will come for me," but Zabuza interrupted him. 8 points. "Sensei." As if soothing a young child, Kakashi said, "Sakura, focus, this is the silent killing technique. Zabuza is a master of it. He did not warn everyone that an assassin was just a few seconds away." He repeated, "Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, heart, kidneys, and subclavian arteries. Now which to choose?" Naruto began to tremble. He could not possibly perish, not with all he's just been through. His face took on an expression of determination. Even Sasuke was trembling. He was driving himself crazy because he couldn't see anything around him, his ears were ringing, and his heart felt like it was going to explode through his ribs. "Sasuke. Calm down. I won't let you guys die." Zabuza emerged in the circle between the genin as Kakashi finished speaking. No one had anticipated that Zabuza would turn to water, but no one had anticipated that Naruto would spin in an instant and slam a kunai into his chest. Sakura briefly experienced a glimmer of hope before her thoughts overtook her. Well, it seems not all your brats are incompetent, are they? I might just let the girl live. Wait, but... Naruto was furious and exclaimed, "Hey, did you just call me a girl?" He quickly whirled around but was unable to locate the Jounin once more. Zabuza merely chuckled as he abruptly materialized behind Kakashi, severing his body in two before he too exploded into water. What? Has he imitated my jutsu? He felt a blade against his neck as he began to growl. Now it's over. As the Zabuza behind Kakashi's kunai turned to water, Sakura couldn't help but cheer for her sensei but shrank when another one appeared behind their sensei, imitating his capture. Zabuza kicked Kakashi in the back as he was trying to flee, sending him crashing into a tree. How powerful is this man? I'm good as dead, passed through Tazuna's mind and through all the genins. In the water, Kakashi erred by attempting to conceal his next move. It didn't feel right as he stepped in knee deep. Zabuza swiftly demonstrated a series of hand signals before lifting Kakashi out of the water in a ball. I have you now. Hey, you're not as strong as you think. Now all I have to do is kill this lot, Zabuza said, gesturing to the genin and Tazuna, who both froze. It may be made of water, but this prison is stronger than steel. You think that headband makes you ninja? You are all weak. It's pathetic to know this is what Konoha is producing. You are all a joke. He produced a clone that immediately charged at the genin. When he caught himself, he clutched his stomach and moaned. He kicked out and struck Naruto in the stomach, sending him flying back. Naruto got up and looked around, but he froze just as he was about to try a counterattack. Before he knew it, his body was moving backwards without his command. See what I mean? The others are all there and mostly fine, but this one looks different. Still think it's Naruto though. When Naruto felt his body's control return, he turned around at once to see Shikamaru and a small pug. What are you guys doing here? Shikamaru nodded his head and gestured to their two senseis, saying, saving your ass by the looks of it. The real Zabuza was forced to free Kakashi from his water prison after Asuma appeared by the river and attacked him with his extended chakra blades. Asuma received his very own cheer squad in that one action alone, with Sakura and Ino supporting Tazuna. Tazuna was on the verge of joining in the applause. The other genin and Tazuna were approached by Naruto, Shikamaru, and Pakun. While Pakun ran to be nearer to the battle in case Kakashi needed him, the 6 genin stood guard over Tazuna. They all watched in wonder as Kakashi imitated every move Zabuza made, even going so far as to speak aloud what he was thinking. As Zabuza's rage increased, he made a mistake, but before he could finish a fresh set of hand signals, Kakashi had already sped through them and a huge dragon emerged from the water, charging ahead. Zabuza was flung into a tree after being struck by it with such force. How did you? Can you see into the future? He was approached by Kakashi and Asuma, who responded, yes, and your end is near. I can see your death. 2 senbon flew out and struck the missing nin in the neck before the 2 Jounin could attack. Asuma moved forward to feel for a pulse, but when he couldn't find one, he glanced at Kakashi and turned to face the intruder. A boy who was no older than Naruto stood in front of them, wearing a mask that looked a lot like Konoha's Anbu. You're right, this was his last battle. Thank you, I have been hunting him for a while. So you must be a hunter nin from the village hidden in the mist? Asuma glanced at the boy in front of them, but a panic behind them diverted both their attention and Kakashi's. You are well informed. I've been following him for a little bit but only now was a good chance to strike. Naruto, Sasuke and Shikamaru watched the boy. Panic seized Sakura as she froze, fearing that something might go wrong again. Sensei. I think Naruto has fainted. The 2 men hurried to see how he was doing and discovered that he had. Kakashi hurriedly examined the boy before getting up to face the hunter nin again, only to discover him gone. When all he got were head shakes and guilty looks, he muttered, did anyone see them leave? Keep an eye out. Asuma, can you put Naruto on? His chakra fatigue overcame him before he could finish the sentence, and he also fainted. Hey, guess that's a no. I will carry Kakashi, Slaker you get the kid. Troublesome. Right, Tazuna, was it? We need to get to yours as soon as possible. Which way? Asuma said once more after they had them on their backs. They left for the old man's house after he said, follow me. Unexpectedly few or no complaints were raised by the large group when they arrived at Tazuna's house in record time. Asuma talked to the man along the way, learning more about what had transpired thus far and where Gatos was located in the town. Asuma agreed with Kakashi's earlier decision to remain with the bridge builder until it was finished after Tazuna explained his role in the project and what it would accomplish for everyone. When they arrived at Tazuna's house, a two-story structure outside the town with a view of the water, the man led them all inside to a modestly sized kitchen and dining area. They were then promptly introduced to his lovely daughter Tsunami, who fussed over who was going to be staying where. Before returning downstairs to prepare tea, she had promptly gone to work in the spare bedroom, creating 2 areas for Kakashi and Naruto to lie in. She turned to the others and asked if they had sleeping packs as she skillfully navigated the kitchen. Tsunami quickly thought of all the bedding in her head and told them she would take care of the rest later. Asuma, Shikamaru, and Choji had all packed one, but the others had forgotten. Shortly after, a young boy who was identified as Inari, the son of Tsunami and the grandson of Tazuna, joined them. Everyone sat down to eat as the meal was being served. To the chagrin of the boys, Sakura and Ino were seated on either side of the Uchiha, while Choji, Shikamaru, and Asuma had moved away from the small table to make room for the family. Now Choji, don't eat all the food, you have your own and they don't have to share what they have, so don't take all theirs. Understood? Asuma whispered to Choji before they began eating. Knowing that he could easily eat them out of house and home, the boy nodded quickly. Heck, if he so desired, he could probably devour the entire village. As Tsunami brought their food, they all thanked her, and soon they were all eating in silence. Asuma began, "Thank you Tsunami, you are a wonderful company," but was interrupted by a high-pitched, spine-tingling scream. That came from upstairs. Asuma hurried up the stairs, unsure of what to expect, noting that all of the women were now in this room. After exchanging glances, all of the genin stood up and followed the man. Some were genuinely concerned, while others were merely curious. Asuma pushed through the door to the room where Tsunami had placed Kakashi and Naruto after he had ascended the stairs. When he entered, he only discovered Kakashi. Naruto. Asuma did not hear a response, but he could hear faint noises of movement and then vomit coming from the restroom behind him. He approached the door with a determined expression on his face and muttered, "What the heck is going on? Naruto? Are you in there?" before yelling. On the other side of the door, he could hear water running and shuffling, but he received no response. Naruto? Asuma put a hand on the handle and slowly opened it, sending a warning glance to every genin who had caught up to him. His eyes widened as he caught a glimpse of the figure in the room. Naruto. It's just me, Asuma. What? Shikamaru saw the hesitation on his sensei's face and asked, "Sensei, what's wrong?" Shikamaru disregarded his sensei's advice and shoved past him into the restroom, saying, "Shikamaru, I don't think you should go in there. Or not." Naruto. A highly visible woman washed her face in front of him. Even though the figure was turned away, he could still see the well-developed figure and a voluptuous chest because she had the same hair as Naruto had just moments before. Shikamaru shot a sharp glance back at his sensei, who simply nodded before closing the door. The Jounin sent the others away, and he heard a little commotion. He sighed and looked back at the person he thought was Naruto, who had curled up and moved to sit on the floor. He took a step closer and sat opposite her on the ground. Despite the circumstances, he sounded so casual that Naruto could only stare at him. "Hey." Her voice was smooth and incredibly seductive without her even realizing it. "Really? All you can say is, hey?" she asked. Before becoming irritable and mumbling to herself, she blushed and said, "Well, it got you to look at me, didn't it? I'm sorry I didn't quite catch that." "Good, because it wasn't at you. Naruto. You can't stay in here forever. Kakashi is unconscious at the moment. He overused his Sharingan and got chakra exhaustion, but when he is awake I will send him for you. Or you could just tell me what's going on now without everyone eavesdropping. So, what do you want to do?" It would be an understatement to say that the glare scared him when her now crimson eyes met his. It was unquestionably worse than his mother's. "Fine. You want to know what happened? I don't fucking know. One moment we were attacked by the Chunnin, the next I jumped in front of an attack meant for Sasuke. I lost my eyesight and was completely unconscious. Well shit. I don't know if I can tell you or not. Well. Oh fuck it, Team 7 knows and you're smart. I'm sure you'll figure it out soon enough anyway." She took a moment to regroup her ideas. She continued, much more quietly this time, while glancing down at her hands. "Well, you know how the Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi all those years ago. Turns out you can't kill chakra beasts. You have to seal them away. He sealed it in me when I was a newborn baby Shika," she said, looking up into Shikamaru's eyes. Shikamaru put a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder after noticing that telling him this was hurting him. I've known about the Kyuubi since I was 5. She's how I know as much as I do ya know. Growing up with no one, she acted like a sister for me, and I trust her. Shika. You need to understand that Kurama has never hurt me, only helped and healed me. When I was rendered unconscious, I met with her in my Mindscape and we went over my options. Stay there and die, return and stay blind, return and have her heal me the best she can, which would leave me with blurred vision at best, or merge with her. When Shikamaru's realized which option they had chosen, his eyes widened. I can see you figured it out, huh? Well, to be honest, neither of us knew how obvious and severe the changes would be. I knew I'd get her sight, and I know now I'm getting her other senses because I managed to stab that Zabuza guy before I even really knew he was there. Same with a bunny, but this. Naruto referred to the changes in appearance. Well, I don't know. After a brief period of silence, Naruto looked back at Shikamaru's and said, worst of all, Shika, it's gone. Oh. Yeah, I guess it would be, huh? How troublesome. Shika felt extremely uncomfortable, with his face nearly losing its color as he thought about what would have happened to him. I guess that explains the scream. Naruto reddened once more. Instead of sitting across from Naruto, Shikamaru shifted to sit next to him. Silently, the two of them leaned against the bathroom wall, simply absorbing everything. You know, he was my father, Minato. They sank back into silence and sat there for what seemed like hours before they moved again. I know. I've known that one for a while. I mean, you were like a chibi version of him. How no one else noticed is beyond me. Shikamaru shot Asuma a stern glance in return. The man quickly deciphered the hidden message, closed the door, and faced the other gender. Head back downstairs and finish your dinner. In an attempt to get what she wanted, Ino stepped forward and complained, but Asuma. Sensei. I want to know what happened to Naruto. Forget what Ino. Pig wants Sasuke and I are his teammates. We should be in there, not that lazy guy. Asuma crossed his arms and said, no, now all of you go. They all turned and shuffled down the stairs. With a final glance at the door, Asuma let out a sigh and proceeded to finish his tea. Kakashi, you better bloody wake up soon. I need a cigarette. Asuma slowly made his way back down the stairs while mentally estimating Shikamaru's course of action. It's likely that he's playing it like shogi. Before he excused himself, the man took his time eating and enjoying it. Since they had arrived, the outside air had significantly cooled, and he could see the smoke curling upwards and wispling as he lit a cigarette. He heard a tiny noise on the roof behind him as he took a long drag. He looked up to see the silhouettes of two genin, one of whom had a pineapple-like head shape, and the other, whom he assumed to be Kakashi, a peculiar little pupil, but not so little anymore. He was certain that he would have a lot of explaining to do tomorrow. Asuma was compelled to light another cigarette. Kakashi woke up the following morning, still exhausted. He looked around the room and saw that Sasuke was lying on a blanket with his pack acting as a pillow, while Asuma, Shikamaru, and the Akamichi boy were all sleeping in packs. Where is Naruto? The girls are probably with Tsunami, but I can't even make out Naruto's bed. Although he was able to get his body to sit, he woke Asuma up in the process. Don't tell me your body is finally catching up with your hair color, the man said with a sly smile. I'm sorry, did you say something? Kakashi attempted to act calm but, as he was well aware, failed miserably. Asuma approached his Jounin partner and assisted him in standing up, saying, "You baka, that only works on Guy." They walked to the door and exited the room while supporting Kakashi's weight. The sound of someone searching the kitchen carried up the stairs, so the two made the silent decision to go downstairs and investigate. Since her breakfast last night was so delicious, Asuma secretly hoped it was Tsunami preparing it. In contrast, Kakashi had a mission. He had a lot of questions for him, and he was on a quest to locate his missing knucklehead. When they reached the bottom step, they turned to face the kitchen and walked out into the meals room's landing. Tsunami was working happily, just as Asuma had hoped, but there was another woman next to her, and although she was much younger, she was unquestionably far ahead in terms of womanly curves. They both turned to face them as Asuma cleared his throat. Her voice was smooth to their ears, and she giggled as Kakashi's mouth fell open. Kakashi. Sensei. Asuma-san, good morning. You better close your mouth before you catch flies. Tsunami and I were just cooking breakfast. Can one of you go wake the others up? Asuma hurriedly assisted Kakashi in sitting down before nearly sprinting up the stairs. I'll go. He couldn't control the smile that came to his face as he ran up the stairs. The new Naruto had not yet been seen by the others. Well, I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to call it a night. Don't do anything stupid, yeah. Shikamaru sighed as he turned to face Naruto. He could see his childhood friend shift and give him a sour look in the moonlight. Hours ago, the two of them had relocated from the floor of the bathroom to the roof and taken a seat to watch the stars. They had heard everyone go to bed shortly after they had awoken, and they had witnessed Asuma go out to the front deck to smoke a few cigarettes. Up until now, they had not communicated since arriving here. Assuming Naruto would not respond, Shika got up and began to descend, saying, "Night Shika." He glanced back and a small smile appeared on his face. Naruto sat up and assumed a meditative pose as he walked away. It was time to attempt to ascertain what was happening and what had truly occurred. After clearing her head for a few minutes, Naruto soon found herself strolling through the well-known corridors of her mindscape. Naruto went to the location where the seal used to be and asked, "Kurama? Kurama, can you hear me?" Naruto gasped as he turned the corner and entered the spacious room that once housed the sealed cage and saw a fox the size of a horse lying in the center of the floor. Kurama had been reduced to the size of her paw due to compression. The fox transformed into a human, and Naruto accepted the big smile that appeared on her face. "Naru, I was wondering when you'd show up." "Rama." They embraced in a way that could only be described as crushing. After a few minutes, Kurama finally withdrew and looked closely at the young boy, now a young woman, before her. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Naru. The thought of this happening did cross my mind, but I never thought it would be completely possible." The words, "It's okay. Honestly, we will get through this and we will do it together, Rama." Kurama looked up to see Naruto's eyes full of resolve. "Well, okay then. I guess this means we had better figure out everything that's changed, yes?" "Well, one thing for sure, it's gone," Naruto said, nodding as he looked down. "Oh honey, you're still stuck on that. You will survive, trust me, it's more fun being female." Kurama laughed out loud, and Naruto could see the mischief they could get up to in the look in her eye, which made her smile as well. As soon as Kurama realized Naruto was preoccupied, he added quietly and swiftly, "Sometimes." They took a seat together and started making a list of all the changes they had already observed. They listed her hearing, smell, reflexes, and predatory instincts in addition to the obvious changes in gender and appearance. "So you mean I'm becoming more fox-like? Well, considering what I am, I guess it's only natural, but we will keep an eye on it, and if it continues to change and become more fox-like," Kurama punctuated her remarks with quotations. "Well, I'm guessing that since the merge has only recently happened, any improvements or changes are either still developing or possibly even have yet to show. If I grow fox ears and a tail, I'm coming in here and kicking your ass. Oh, they'd be gorgeous. Besides, think of all the endless possibilities you'd be able to use them for. I'm thinking you're sexy no jutsu but with a twist." "Rama. Goodness, I'm not going to use my new body for that. I mean, I do have some nice curves to me, but Rama, that's too far." Kurama simply laughed it off when Naruto struck him on the shoulder and said, "Oh Naruto, you will have to answer that calling eventually, and trust me, your voice alone is enough to make any man shake." "Kurama. I was a male myself up until recent." She winked and said, "Don't make me tease you more, him." The two discussed the situation further and devised a strategy for how they would approach the long overdue discussion with teams 7 and 10. Over breakfast the next morning, it was agreed that Naruto would undoubtedly tell them. Depending on how things went, she would either urge Kakashi to train them or go away for the day and train herself. Although it wasn't a good plan, it was preferable to entering the situation totally unprepared. They carried on talking until Kurama told Naruto about the duties of women and what she had discovered about being a woman from watching Kushina. Naruto felt completely ashamed. "Get your asses out of bed, everyone, breakfast is almost ready." Asuma proudly praised their response. As they were screamed at, the three male genin awoke in shock and panic. Shikamaru and Choji quickly recognized his voice, much to his dismay. In contrast, the Uchiha tried to appear tough, but Asuma could still see the fear in his eyes. He laughed and turned to leave the room, making his way to the girls' quarters. He knocked on their door and yelled, "Ino, Sakura, get up. Breakfast is ready and I'm sure you guys need something to keep you going. If not, then you still better bloody come down." With his mind still focused on what was going to happen, Asuma pivoted on his heel and headed back downstairs. When Asuma returned to the landing, he noticed that Naruto and Tsunami were eating breakfast, which had already been served. Kakashi simply sat there and gazed at his pupil. Asuma approached the man, tapped Kakashi on the shoulder, and pointed to the food, saying, "Eat up, you sure need it after your chakra exhaustion." The scarecrow merely hummed in reply, but ate quickly and replaced his mask before anyone could see. Asuma is still in awe of the man's ability to eat so quickly and without anyone noticing. Genjutsu must be involved. An excellent genjutsu technique. They heard the genin on the stairs shortly after, and although Naruto's instinct was to flee, she was stopped by a glance from both Jounin. "What's for breakfast, huh? It smells fantastic." Shoji was the first to fall, and he hesitated for a moment before Shikamaru followed and shoved him forward as he turned to face the food. "First, food, Shoji." His voice was barely audible, but Naruto's ear perked up as she heard the words, "Don't make this harder for Naruto." The two girls stopped in their tracks as the other genin entered the room, one muttering that her male teammate had larger breasts than she did, while the other immediately fussed over how cute her kimono was, and where did she get it? "Well, Tsunami gave it to me." While Tsunami also responded, "Oh, it's nothing special, just one I've had for years." Naruto's awkward response was, "I will have to find something else to wear soon because it's a bit small." When the new but somewhat familiar voice spoke, the Uchiha's focus shifted from brooding to the new woman, who looked strikingly like Naruto from yesterday. However, this person was clearly female, and Sasuke couldn't help but watch her breasts, which were very visible and partially visible. The woman's crimson eyes and recognizable whisker marks caught Sasuke's attention as he swiftly raised his eye to meet her face. "Sasuke, Teme. Are you snarling?" As if nothing had happened, she immediately stopped and returned to her breakfast. She could hear her laughing in the back of her mind. "Oh Kami, Rama, I just growled at Sasuke, Teme." Kakashi said, as though nothing unusual was happening, but he was twitching impatiently in silence while he waited for everyone to eat. "Everyone eat up, we have a long day ahead of us." They were halfway through the meal when Inari showed up, glaring at them all and saying, "I don't know why you're doing this, you're all going to die." "Inari." Tsunami turned to face her son and said, "Don't do such things, I apologize for Inari's behavior." The boy said, dropping his bottom lip and running away in tears. As Tsunami moved to clear the table, the ninja fell into an awkward silence, with no one knowing what to say. The group had been eating the meal that Tsunami and Naruto had prepared, and after everyone had finished, they all shared their thank yous. Naruto's eyes widened a little as he blinked and said, "Naruto, speak up, Missy, or I'll test what it's like for me to be out." "All right." Taking a deep breath, Naruto continued, "Well, when we were attacked by those Chunnin, I remember seeing one going for Sasuke and I guess I just jumped in the way." Naruto couldn't bring herself to look up, but she could feel the eyes on her, even though she wasn't sure if it was because she actually started this conversation or because of her awful attempt to start it. "The blade was poison, but I was still cut." She halted and turned to face the room as she sensed a shift in the atmosphere. "I don't remember what happened, but I could hear Sasuke talking, then I think I fell unconscious. What took place?" "You. Oh well, you passed away on us, Naru." Kakashi's expression was broken as he spoke. Each member of the group had a different reaction. Sasuke felt uneasy right away when he thought about the blood on his hands, and Sakura appeared as though she was about to throw up. While Shikamaru and Asuma gave Naruto a sympathetic glance, one pointed to Naruto and the other at Kakashi. Team 10 members were utterly shocked. "Oh, I apologize if I frightened you. I had a choice, ya know." The now young woman said, looking down once more to consider her options. "I had two options. I could have died, remained in my mindscape, and simply abandoned everything here, but I had a choice." Determined, she looked up and said, "Our village was attacked 12 years ago. Despite the Yondaime Hokages and many of our ninjas' best efforts, the enemy's force proved too formidable to defend their home and everyone within. The Kyuubi no Yoko was that adversary. After being compelled to go farther, the Yondaime sealed the chakra beast. He sealed it, half into himself and half into a newborn baby, despite our childhood education that it was killed." She took a moment to process the information. "That baby was me." Asuma glanced at Kakashi but remained silent, saying, "I am more than just Naruto Uzumaki. That's how I was given a choice. I trust in the Kyuubi and the Kyuubi trusts in me. Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze is my name. I have the title of the beast behind me, not just as a Jinchuriki, because my heart is of the wind and my blood is of the whirlpool." Shikamaru quickly covered Ino's mouth with his hand as she opened it, saying, "Perhaps we should keep this between us. And anything else that comes up," he said, turning to face the two Jounin. After the two Jounin nodded, Kakashi said, "Definitely. We will report to Hokage Sama upon our return to Konoha and resolve the matter at that time." He turned and gave his student a stern look, but she didn't break, so she returned it. "I, like the rest of you, want to know everything else, but maybe Naruto, Naruko, has reasons for keeping it from us. Perhaps we ought to channel this inquisitive energy toward training. I'm not sure about the rest of you." but I believe it would be beneficial to stay occupied. She flashed her award. Winning smile, which was somehow even brighter than it had been when she was a he. Everyone, though some didn't want to admit it, could not help but show off her success. Training went rather smoothly, and Kakashi noticed that Naruto was able to figure things out more easily than before and that she now had more than acceptable chakra control. Kakashi had assigned them all a tree climbing exercise, and Naruto had given it his all. As he addressed the group, Kurama spoke to her and added details that her sensei had left out. Naruto, Sakura, and Shikamaru had made it to the top of the tree, while Ino and Sasuke had only made it halfway. Focus the chakra into your feet, too little and you'll fall, but too much and it will reject and explode. Shoji hadn't been committed enough to give it his all. Throughout the entire training morning, Naruto could hear Sakura and Ino whispering about her in the distance. They were wondering about everything, including her true identity and how her hair managed to stay out of the way during the workout. However, she was never approached by the two girls. The morning quickly passed, and Kakashi gave the order for everyone to return to Tazuna's house for lunch and relaxation. Naruto felt the eyes on her once more as they got closer to the house, and she couldn't help but sigh. She halted her stride and looked around at everyone. She didn't realize the impact of her words as she spoke. You do realize I can hear everything you are saying? I can feel you all staring and I'm getting over it fast. She put her hands on her hips and looked directly at everyone, asking, why don't you just say it my face huh? Naru. She faltered and pulled the chakra back when she heard Kurama's voice in the back of her mind. You're leaking chakra. She was shocked to see that her chakra was fading as she glanced around at everyone once more. Her leak was not from ki. Rather, it seemed as though her chakra had been tampering with their emotions and hormones. What the? She began, but was abruptly interrupted. Kakashi pauses to gather his thoughts before saying, whatever the heck that was, don't do it again. That was intoxicating actually. Naruto, you need to be careful with that. Naruto pointed to the others and said, Kakashi. Sensei? We might need to help them. A tiny drop of blood was visible beneath the noses of Sakura, Sasuke, Ino, and Shoji, who had all fainted from her chakra. Oh, honey, you truly are a vixen. Naruto couldn't help but blush, but she chose not to respond. As the two Jounin worked to wake their genin, she smiled and scratched the back of her neck, saying, hey. Whoops. But her focus quickly shifted. Sue. Did it affect you? Because you didn't faint and I can understand our senseis not but you on the other hand. Shikamaru returned his hands to his pockets and continued to walk toward the house, saying, troublesome. She reached forward to take his arm, but he sidestepped at the last second, sending her falling. Hey, troublesome is not an answer, mister. The fall had been sufficient to shift it completely, but the only issue was that Naruto was still wearing the slightly too small kimono that Tsunami had lent her, and as she had trained that morning, the obi that held it in place had gradually loosened. The tiny piece of cloth fell as Naruto got to her feet, and her kimono's front fully opened, revealing everything to Shikamaru. His eyes widened a little, but he quickly regained his composure. He turned, lowered his head, and proceeded to the house, but his face was too brightly flushed to conceal it. Many of them were reflecting on their peculiar morning as they ate their meal in awkward silence when they eventually returned. Sakura sighed as she glanced around the room before focusing on Inari, who was looking at a ripped family photo. Why does Inari keep looking at that picture? As Inari got up and fled the room in rage, everyone stopped eating. After exchanging glances with Tazuna, Tsunami followed him out as Tazuna spoke to get their attention. His name was Kaiza and was Inari's stepfather. He was a hero. He came here as a traveling fisherman and met Inari when he saved him from drowning. Inari came to rely on him heavily to the point where he wouldn't stand up for himself. He became titled as a hero when he single-handedly saved a large portion of the village from a flood, and when Gato arrived, he had Kaiza killed in an attempt to destroy the hope of the land, a strategy that sadly succeeded and traumatized our Inari. He lost all hope and doesn't believe in heroes anymore. That's why he hasn't been nice to you lot, Tazuna said, and everyone listened, able to tell by his voice that they did. I'm sorry for bringing it up. Don't be, Sakura. The group fell silent once more as they realized what the boy had endured. In her mind, Naruto concluded that it was her responsibility to restore Inari's faith in heroes. Naruto sneaked out later that afternoon with the intention of practicing and perfecting the tree climbing skills as well as figuring out what she had done with her chakra earlier to fool the others. Naruto had spent hours outside, climbing trees so many times that she and Kurama could no longer remember how many. Without listening to Kurama's words, Naruto decided to work on the strange chakra she had released earlier. She wiped the perspiration from her brow and sent it out, saying she would be fine. However, as she sent it out, the shock of it coming back to her with the same force she released caused her to stumble back and faint from shock. Naruto slept soundly in the forest as the day turned to night, totally unaware of her surroundings. One of the many advantages of the merge was that Kurama was much more aware of their surroundings, so she kept an eye out from her position inside Naruto. As the sun rose after several hours, Kurama sensed that someone was coming and said, "Kit, wake up." Naruto opened her eyes to see a beautiful young woman. "Are you okay? I don't think it's very safe to be sleeping in the forest alone." Her voice was much more sultry than she had intended, but instead of expressing the shock she felt on the inside, a tiny, sly smile spread across her lips. "Oh. There's no need to worry, stranger. Chan, I am a ninja." Before responding, the stranger's eyes widened a little and they cleared their throat. "My name is Haku. May I ask yours?" Haku clumsily complied when Naruto held out her hand as though she needed assistance getting to her feet. Glancing at the elegant kimono, she says, "I'm Naruto. I was out here training, but what were you doing?" she asks. "Gathering herbs. My friend is ill and I want to make him better. If you were training, why are you wearing a kimono? That's not very appropriate for a ninja." The two kept asking each other questions, ranging from the subjects of their beloved people to the color of their shoes, until Naruto finally grabbed Haku's chin. She released Haku before turning away, saying, "You are hiding something. What have you not told me? You need to leave." Haku turned away after giving a quick nod. "By the way, I'm a male." As Haku vanished from view, Naruto simply arched an eyebrow and said, "Oops." The sound of footsteps behind her swiftly silenced herself. Doubting thoughts. "Naruto, finally, I've been looking for you all morning. What have you been doing, Udobi?" "Never mind, you missed breakfast." The two quickly became involved in a competition. Naruto waited for Sasuke to reach the top of the trees before she did, and then they triumphantly headed for Tazuna's. Despite the fact that they were both exhausted, Naruto was incredibly happy, which nobody liked. "As I said before, you're all going to die. You keep working as if you stand a chance, but you're wrong. You have no idea and you never will because you haven't been through what we have." Inari maintained his stance. Naruto got to her feet and slammed her hands on the table, asking, "Is that really what you think?" She turned and walked out of the room, leaving no one behind. "If it is, then you're just a coward." The group had dispersed by the following morning. While Team 10 had left training and the rest of Team 7 had gone to the bridge, Naruto was left to sleep in. The sun was already high in the sky when Naruto woke up, and she jumped up in a panic. She hurried down the stairs and greeted Tsunami and Inari with a quick, "Good morning," to which they responded with a shy smile and a laugh. Knowing they had reached the bridge, Naruto sped off. "Naru, quit." Naruto stumbled and fell, landing her face directly next to a dead carcass as a result of the loud shout in her head. She leapt to her feet and shuffled back almost immediately, letting out a high-pitched squeal. Naruto sighed before evaluating the scene in which Kurama had stopped her, saying, "I can't believe I just squealed." With wide eyes, she saw the damage head heading toward Tazuna's house. The trees had all been cut down, and the poor hog she nearly fell on had just been killed. "Oh Kami. Rama, I don't know if I can't fight yet." Naruto ran back, and there was a brief pause before Kurama responded. "Just do what comes naturally to you, Kit. I don't know either." Instead of questioning her meaning, Naruto crept onto the building's roof and out of the tree line. As she spied on those below, she felt the blood rush to her ears and nose. As she listened, she realized that the two thugs had broken into the house and asked Tsunami to accompany them, but Inari had briefly intervened to stop them. One of the timid thugs raised his sword to Inari, ready to use it once more, and said, "Come with us or the boy dies." The two thugs exchanged glances and agreed, saying, "Don't. If you kill him, I'll bite my tongue and kill myself. You need a hostage, right? Then let him go and I'll accompany you." Naruto kept watching as they led Tsunami out onto the deck, saying, "You're lucky boy." She had hoped that Inari would return and confront his fears. When they attempted to attack Inari, she quietly fell to the ground behind them and cleared her throat, saying, "You know boys, one should always watch his back." She kicked the other in the back and threw a shuriken at him, forcing him to release Tsunami before she was able to knock them out. The three of them then tied the thugs up. Before she excused herself and headed toward the bridge, she winked and ruffled Inaris's hair, saying, "Ya know what, you really are brave." Tazuna and Team 7 had come to the bridge that morning with the intention of starting the construction and bringing it closer to completion, but they stopped in a state of shock, fear, and rage. The bodies of Tazuna's employees were everywhere, and before they could tend to the corpses, A veil of mist swept across the clearing, confirming Asuma and Kakashi's suspicion that Zabuza was still alive. Ready for anything, Kakashi pulled out a kunai and unrolled his Sharingan, saying, "Zabuza is still alive just as I thought. Be on guard." Kakashi thought this Haku was the masked nin from their previous encounter. "Your cute little Jounin isn't here him. Sorry Haku, but it looks as though you won't have any competition after all. That one is shaking again. Hey, pathetic." Oh, he isn't shaking from fear. Sasuke now. Sasuke swung his weapon just as several clones surrounded them. He struck them all, and they drowned. His speed has improved this past week. Haku capitalized on the team's arrogance and Zabuza's now. Disrupted jutsu with demonic mirroring ice crystals. The water puddles erupted and solidified around Sasuke, forming numerous mirrors, and Haku entered one of them. Kakashi turned to assist his student, but Zabuza stopped him, saying, "Your student is as good as dead now Hitaki." Haku was violently hurling Senbon at the Uchiha back in the mirror dome, severing different parts of his skin. Despite his best efforts, Sasuke was unable to catch the masked nin in time. Sakura threw a kunai in the hopes that it would strike its target, but when it was caught, she was immediately let down. All she could do was stand and wait for Team 10 to arrive, and fear grew in her chest. Naruto's entrance into the clearing partially addressed her silent request for assistance. Naruto quickly took in the scene before her and hurried to Sasuke. Leaping to her feet, she slipped through the opening at the top of the dome, threw several shuriken, and succeeded in knocking the masked captor of Sasuke out of the mirrors. "So, this is what you were hiding from me? Oh Haku-kun, why do you hide your pretty face from me?" she said, smirking as she focused on the masked individual, observing his hair and clothing. She could sense Sasuke's gaze on her back and knew he was looking at her as if she were insane. Perhaps she was. Naruto, however, was not going to let that deter her. Instead, she released the odd chakra gradually and allowed it to permeate Haku. She hoped that it would divert his attention long enough for Sasuke to exit the dome. But Haku stopped them as soon as she attempted to shove him through the opening. The two were hit by every senbon that Haku threw at them. Sasuke felt all of his energy escaping his body as more needles pierced his skin, causing him to groan in agony. Naruto turned back to face Haku after noticing her teammate straining to move at all. She could see herself and Sasuke in the mirror behind him. It seemed to be taunting her that her friend was dying and she was powerless to stop it. She observed her appearance while protecting Sasuke and herself from the ongoing onset of senbon. She was taller and slimmer, with hips and a waist similar to those in Kakashi's dirty book and breasts that were the ideal size, neither too big nor too small. The light reflected from the blonde but vanished in the red, and her wild, free hair, which reached her hips, somehow managed to avoid getting caught up in her shuriken throwing and blocking attacks. She was happy to see that she still had her father's eye shape and whisker marks, but the crimson color that filled them was like blood. She met Haku at one of the mirrors to prevent another attack. Seeing them on herself was a little unsettling, but she grinned since she knew Kurama had given her the eyes. As Naruto withdrew from Haku and defended Sasuke once more, she discovered that her chakra was stronger this time and could have caused Haku to tremble and tumble out of the mirror. Her chakra caused the dome above them to melt, and Haku dropped to his knees in front of her. Has her chakra actually done this? Naruto looked around in disbelief. She started to speak, but a distant sound interrupted her and roused Haku from his reverie. He vanished in a flash after saying, "I'm sorry, Naruto, but this is where I must leave." After calling forth his ninken, Kakashi found Zabuza in the fog and restrained him. Bird chirping filled the clearing as Kakashi was preparing his jutsu, and the ice dome fell as Zabuza let go of his jutsu and the area cleared. He pushed his arm forward to Zabuza's chest, and the sound of it striking flesh erupted, leaving only the chirping. Haku! Naruto rushed over as Kakashi fixed his attention on the masked nin standing in front of him. "So Zabuza was your precious person, huh?" She moved forward and removed Kakashi's arm from Haku. After laying him on the ground, Naruto removed his mask and set it beside him. "Ya no, we could have been friends under different circumstances." She stood up, clenching her fists, and planted a soft kiss on his forehead. In an attempt to touch Zabuza's icy heart, she talked and yelled, "You! He cared for you. You were his precious person and you just let him die." Naruto got up to attack him, but Kakashi stopped her, saying, "He was a ninja. A ninja is just a tool and that's all he was to me." A slow clapping sound came from the far side of the bridge before their fight could continue. The source of the applause, a short, fat man they all recognized as Gato, was surrounded by about 100 hired thugs. When he realized he had everyone's attention, He began to talk about his plan to kill Haku and Zabuza and use them only as tools. Team 10 joined Inari and many of the villagers who had gathered behind the ninja during his speech. Zabuza snapped because he had finally had enough of the men's chatter. Reaching for his sword, he turned to face Naruto. A tiny tear glistened in his eye, but he remained silent. Before he stopped in front of him, he ran forward and wiped out the thugs on the direct path to Gato. He raised his weapon and swung it down on Gato, killing the man instantly. "This is for Haku." He snarled as he turned around, unfazed by the blood, but the thugs were running and escaping onto the boat they had come on. After shaking his head, he approached Haku's body and knelt beside him. As everyone fell silent, he took Haku's hand and began to cry. For what seemed like hours, he remained there totally unaware of everyone else, and he didn't turn away from Haku until he felt a tiny hand on his shoulder. As everyone around them fell silent, Zabuza took Haku's hand and began to cry. For what seemed like hours, he remained there totally unaware of anyone else, only turning his head away from Haku when he felt a delicate hand rest on his shoulder. Beside him, Naruto was on her knees, her eyes sad. "We've been here for a few hours, Zabuza. Did you notice the snow?" After removing the bandage from his face, Zabuza turned to face Naruto, who grinned at him and muttered, "I'm sorry, Haku. To make you cry. I just hope you know what you truly meant to me. Perhaps we should give Haku a proper burial." She pointed to the bridge. "Everything has been cleaned up and they're working down the other end. I thought I had better stay by your side for now." Zabuza silently consented to the burial, and they selected a flower dot and herb filled clearing that was rather lovely and made him think of Haku. As they remained silent, he dug the hole himself. The deeper he went, the more his heart ached. He placed a big stone on top of the grave and carefully sat Haku's mask on top of it. After Haku was buried, he said, "I regret never letting him know how much he actually meant to me. The day he met you in the forest, he came back smiling like an idiot. Hey, he was a good kid." With her arms folded across her chest, Naruto stood a short distance away and asked, "What are you going to do now?" At that moment, Zabuza saw that her kimono was repeatedly cut, leaving nothing to the imagination. He glanced at Naruto and then back at Haku's grave. He grabbed Naruto's wrist and shot off, saying, "Well, first I'm going to get you some clothes. After that, I'm not sure." They quickly came to the front of a little log cabin and entered. Haku kept his things over there. "Take his clothes." With a look of shock in her eyes, Naruto said, "Oh, I can't do that to you." He looked uncomfortable for a moment before turning around, which Naruto took as a sign to change. "I have no use for his clothes. You on the other hand do. I'd rather them go to use anyway." She swiftly swapped out Tsunami's frayed kimono for the pink, sleeveless one that Haku had been wearing when they first met after discovering it among his possessions. "You can turn around again." When Zabuza saw what she had selected, a glimmer of sadness passed through his eyes. He smiled as he picked it up and said, "Here, I will put this on for you. Hold your hair up. I always liked that one." It was odd to be wearing his clothes, but everything fit surprisingly well. He put the thin black choker Haku had been wearing around her neck. He pointed to the choker and said, "It fits you. Make sure you always wear that too. A fox like you needs a collar." "Hey." Kurama laughed uncontrollably in the back of her mind. He picked up his kabikirabocho and sat down to clean it, saying, "You're a vixen kid. You have a future ahead of you in seduction and assassination. You will need help though. You best be getting back to the bridge, kid." After staring at him for a while, Naruto nodded and said, Yeah, okay. See you around." She crossed her arms and sniffed. She had never felt so uncomfortable and uncertain of what to do. "Scram, kid." She hurried out of the cabin without turning around. Team 7 and Team 10 packed their things and headed home when the bridge was finally finished. Every member of the village greeted them as they crossed the water and gave them heartfelt thanks. "I want to thank you all for what you've done for us. Helping us complete this bridge will change our lives forever, and if you ever need a bridge builder, let me know," said Tazuna, who took the stage. He gave a nod to both teams and grinned as his gaze fell on Naruto. "And you. So much has happened on this mission for you, and yet you've stayed as strong-willed and knuckleheaded as you were when I met you in the office. You might not be as short as you were, but you're still annoying brat. I want to thank you the most. You did something no one else has been able to do for a very long time." He turned to face Inari. "You put confidence back into my little grandson, and both Tsunami and I are grateful. You brought the whole village together by that alone, and all of us thank you." As Naruto flushed, a broad smile appeared on his face. As he exclaimed, "That is why we have all decided to name the bridge after you." A banner fell to the ground behind them, revealing an overhead sign. The great Naruto bridge, again we thank you all. Inari rushed to embrace Naruto as they bid her farewell and exchanged more thank yous. You know it's okay to cry. In an attempt to remain composed in front of the ninja, Inari suppressed his tears, while Naruto went against her own advice and did the same. Kakashi's voice reached them, and she turned away after grinning at the boy. Naruto, hurry up, she said. Naruto let the tears fall after waving over her shoulder until they were out of sight. Sakura rolled her eyes and walked beside Sasuke, with Ino on the other side. Oh Naruto, grow up, she said. The two girls ignored the Uchiha's ears being harmed as they talked and gossiped. As they strolled, Asuma lit a cigarette and Choji opened a brand new package of his favorite flavor chips, which he took without anyone noticing. Behind them, Kakashi had his nose in his small orange book while Naruto continued to weep silently. Shikamaru, on the other hand, was walking silently beside them, hands in his pockets, and a bored expression on his face. They would have appeared incredibly strange and out of place to anyone who saw them. Naruto's thoughts returned to Zabuza as the group made their way home. She chose to tell Kakashi about it only now, even though she knew he had been following them since they had left Wave. Kakashi. Sensei, we are being followed, she whispered as she retreated to walk beside her sensei. They heard Asuma snicker, but he just gave her a blank stare and said, I know. It's your new friend. I'm not dealing with him, he's your trouble to look after. She pouted at the man and then smiled, saying, oh gee, thanks. She glanced at the others before turning back to him and pushing him aside with a smile. Asuma's little chuckle developed into a fit of giggles. Oh Kakashi. Sensei. You should really be more careful. Maybe you should stop reading that book and look where you're going. When Kakashi pulled himself together and met her eyes, her heart stopped. She ran, saying, oh. She ran quickly. Naruto accelerated to the point where she ran past Sakura and knocked her down. Without turning around, Naruto heard Sakura's angry yells trailing behind her and silently decided to keep running until she arrived in Konoha. Eventually, the others would catch up. Zabuza watched from a distance as the Konoha shinobi bid the Wave residents farewell. While he was staring at the young woman who had captured his interest, another part of him was cursing himself and wondering why he was observing them. He had to attend to the fire that burned inside her. It was somewhat like himself, but much less barbaric. Not that he would say it aloud, but he liked it. He left as the group set out on their adventure. Zabuza trailed behind them, watching each one and noting any important details. He looked at the walking scarecrow and said, I know. It's your new friend. I'm not dealing with him. He's your trouble to look after. At least they're not stupid enough to not notice me following, he said. Even so, some of those brats appear shocked. Zabuza could practically hear the cunning in her voice as she said, oh gee, thanks. When the girl shoved the man aside, he wasn't let down. Oh Kakashi. Sensei. You should really be more careful. Maybe you should stop reading that book and look where you're going. After a brief period of silence, the tension in the air increased. She ran, saying, oh, she ran quickly. Naruto sped off so fast that she ran right by the pink girl and knocked her down. Naruto didn't turn around. Maybe I ought to follow her. The two Jounin spoke up, interrupting Zabuza's train of thought. Perhaps we should catch up with Naruto. I have no doubt that she will continue to run at full speed until she reaches Konoha's gates. Turning to face the scarecrow, Asuma took a drag from his cigarette and asked, hey, you sure that Pipsqueak has that much energy? She is Konoha's #1 unpredictable shinobi. Ma. Guess I should say Kunoichi now. Kakashi raised his eyebrows, is everyone good to go? The pink-haired banshee stopped walking and crossed her arms, saying, Sensei, I don't know why you're even bothering with Naruto. He is being stupid. Why are you accepting this, Naruto? It's ridiculous. As Kakashi focused on her, the tension in the room increased once more. He stepped forward and said, you are the one being stupid. You have been with us for this entire mission and yet you act as if you know nothing? Sensei. Sakura's eyes widened and then filled with a predatory glaze as the Uchiha brat moved between them. You cannot force her to see this differently, she is being stupid, yes. But I don't think you can talk the stupid out of someone. Zabuza could hear the pink girl's heart breaking because the group was so quiet. He most certainly would have raised his eyebrows if he had any. Observing the Konoha nin's reactions was fascinating. The pink banshee fell to her knees while Kakashi merely stood there and slowly nodded his head. Silently, the young Uchiha pivoted on his heel and headed toward Naruto. He didn't even look at the girl he had just injured. The others shared a look as they got over the shock before one spoke up. Perhaps we should get home ASAP. It may be troublesome. but once we are there everyone can just have time to think over things. Reporting to the Hokage may just help set things straight. The young kid looked towards his blonde teammate and gestured towards the other girl. All right, let's go. Sakura, get up and go with Ino. We're going now. They departed right away, Zabuza following closely behind. Naruto's pace slowed to a halt as she arrived at Konoha's gates. She took a slow step forward and then stopped again, saying, "Here goes nothing." The gatekeepers gave her a weird look but ignored her. "Maybe I should wait for the others," she said. Yep. Definitely waiting for the others. She was aware that nobody would recognize her because she had been a foot shorter when she had left the village, and a man. Before long, Sasuke emerged from the tree line, and Naruto was already standing, waiting for the others. "Don't tell me you ditched them too." Naruto rolled her eyes before turning to face the tree line as Sasuke stopped beside her and said, "HN." She began to move from foot to foot as though it would help, saying, "You think they're coming? I don't want to be standing here all day. I gotta pee." As the eight-person group got closer to the Hokage tower, fear began to seep into Netuko's heart. She had to explain the situation to Gigi after they had already had a tense encounter at the gates. She was confident that everyone in the village would realize something was amiss with the demon brat by the end of their meeting. Not getting a glare for exposing her face in public was odd. It was rather pleasant. It wouldn't last long, though. She turned to face her sensei, who was holding out his hand, saying, "Naru, hurry up now." Since that day, he had completely changed his ways and was attempting to be the best brother he could be. "Kashi-sensei. I don't need to hold your hand. I'm not a baby anymore. Heck, I'm not even who I was last month," Naruto said, rolling her eyes as her face twisted into an odd but anguished expression. Naruto looked up to see his visible eye had a very serious gleam to it, and he knew immediately to follow him. "Well, either way we need to do this report at some stage. And I personally am rather pleased to report you're still alive rather than a casualty, because you were very close to being one." With a nod, she folded her arms across her chest and trailed behind him, silently observing the other follow suit. As they got closer to the big doors leading to the Hokage's office, the group remained silent. As the mission's leader, Kakashi stepped forward and knocked on the door while allowing his chakra to spike. Many of the reporting nin were relieved when they were called inside shortly after, but one in particular was disappointed. With their respective teams standing behind them, Kakashi and Asuma took the lead in the group, and they all bowed in unison out of respect. The elderly man behind the sturdy but worn desk put his hands in front of his face and sighed. The third Hokage leaned back in the chair and opened his mouth, then shut it again. "Well, Naruto, you've definitely changed a bit. That's all you can say." Naruto's rage took over, and her fingers started digging into her hair. She realized what she had said as she was finishing her sentence. "I've turned into a freaking girl and merged with the Kyuubi, and all you can say is that I've changed a bit." The older Sarutobi sat back in his chair and turned to face Kakashi. "Well, Pakun didn't mention that, just that you look different. Trust you to say it so bluntly though, no beating around the bush." The elder Sarutobi motioned for them to begin, saying, "Perhaps we should quickly get the report over with then go into detail." Each team member gave their own account of what happened, and the report was delivered swiftly and effectively. By the time they were done, Naruto was sitting there listening in silence. "The Hokage is given a bad grade. Okay, now Naruto. Naruto, does everyone here know your status? Is there anyone else you wish to inform?" "Honestly, I'd prefer it if no one ever knew, but considering things I should probably tell Team 8. Unsure of what to say, Naruto shrugged and said, "They're currently on a mission out of town, but when they return we could organize another meeting. I'm sure everyone will know soon anyway. How else are we going to explain the fact that I'm suddenly female?" Before Sakura worked up the nerve to speak again, the group fell silent once more. She rolled her eyes and scoffed, "Why are guys going along with this stupid prank? Honestly, it's ridiculous. And everyone knows the fourth Hokage killed the Kyuubi." "Sakura, I've already explained this. You cannot kill chakra. Why are you not accepting of that? Don't tell me you're jealous," Naruto said, glaring at her before anyone could react. "Just because my curves are nicer than yours," she added. Kakashi started to perspire as Naruto put her hands on her hips and stood with pride. "Ma, anyone would assume that he has been a she her entire life based on the way she is acting." He dismissed the idea as Naruto went on talking. Naruto's crossed her arms in front of her chest and turned to face her fellow genin, expecting to see hate in their eyes. "Ya no, if you're going to spit at me and call me a demon, can you hurry up and just do it?" she asked. She could hear them whispering about her, after all. "Naru. Things may have taken a crazy turn, Things may be completely different from here on out, but you know what? You're still our knuckle-headed friend. You're still. Ino was the first to express her point of view. She turned to face her teammates and urged them to speak up, saying, "You're still you. This is just troublesome, just like everything else you come out with." As Ino said, "You're still you. You're just a bit different now." Shikamaru sighed and shoved his hands into his pockets before giving Choji a sharp look and nudging him with his elbow. "I will still share my chips with you. So long as you remember to leave the last one. I don't think anything has changed," Choji exclaimed with pride as the shock subsided, bringing him to life instantly. With a proud smile behind them, Asuma rubbed his hands over their heads, causing all of their hair to get messed up. "Hey, either way you're still a brat. To be honest, if anyone has a problem with this, they can learn to get the hell over it. You've been forced to hold such a large burden that no one else your age has ever had to deal with." His focus shifted to Naruto's teammates. He was unaware of the reason behind Sakura's tears, but her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. Seeing that the Naruto they knew was still inside, Asuma merely hoped they could both see past the demon. Sakura's eyes started to water as Team 10 expressed their support. They were all thrilled to stand by Naruto fearlessly. Every time Sakura made a decision, all she could hear was her mother's voice calling Naru a demon. Sakura was fighting with her inner self, wanting to just accept what had happened and work through it with Naruto. Sighing, Sakura crossed her arms and shifted her weight as everyone's eyes were on her. She looked at Naruto's and said, "I want to try my hardest to be your friend. My mother has always called you a demon, and never did I question it or wonder why. I grew up being told to stay away from you, and when I was placed on the same team as you I continued to hate you like I'd been raised." When Naruto heard those words from someone she believed to be a friend, she turned away. Naruto, I was wrong to believe it. Of course I was going to listen to my mother, but now I've seen the real you. I want to be my own person, and it's my decision to support you." Sakura wiped the tears from her eyes and the room fell silent. After letting out another sigh, she nodded her head and said, "I'm going to support you." Her expression darkened as her gaze returned to Naruto's. All she could hope was that her mother wouldn't be upset with her for this. Naruto's eyes met everyone's before settling on Sasuke. "Thanks guys, it really means a lot hearing that you don't hate me for what I am." As though to challenge him, Naruto crossed her arms and straightened her posture. "So what about you, Teme?" she asked. Everyone in the room thought Sasuke's appearance was the same as always, but Naruto noticed a playful sparkle in his eye. You're still just Adobe if you ask me. You wouldn't find this so amusing if it happened to you, Teme. Just because you didn't wake up one day without your little friend doesn't mean it won't happen yet." It was safe to assume that every man in the room had his manhood covered. After Team 7 and Team 10 had entered the Hokage's office, the atmosphere in the room calmed down as some of the genin were dismissed. The Hokage turned to Shikamaru and silently observed how the two genin had moved to stand beside one another. "Now young Nara, I'm sure you are wondering why I asked you to stay?" he asked. "Not really, Hokage. Sama, I am assuming you would have your reasons." Shikamaru appeared bored and carefree on the outside, as he always did, but on the inside, his mind was listing every reason why the Hokage might have forced him to stay. He didn't wait for a response before asking, "You were the first to speak with Naru after that change, were you not? Naruto, do you mind telling me what exactly happened that day?" Well, when I woke up at Tazuna's home I had to pee. So I found the bathroom and went to do my business, and well, my little buddy wasn't there. I may have screamed." Asuma grinned broadly at the recollection, saying, "Hey, yeah, screamed is an understatement." Was a bit shocked to open the door to see a female standing there. Shikamaru stuffed his hands in his pockets once more and said, "I slipped past Asuma and spoke to Naruto and she explained things. We spend most of the day sitting on the roof in silence." Hiruzen reclined in his chair, his face displaying his advanced age. "So to what extent are things going to change? Can the Kyuubi explain anything?" Before responding, Naruto took a moment to hear what Kurama had to say. "Do you mind if she comes out? It would be the easier thing. That way there is no double explaining and stuff." Another moment of silence followed. "Rama promises to not do anything and that most of her chakra will remain in me." As the adults in the room considered it, there was a brief period of silence. The Hokage motioned for the two Jounin to set up a barrier before saying, "The room's privacy seal is already activated, but to be safe we best set up a barrier so no chakra leaks out. I don't exactly wish to have to deal with the civilians if it's too much," he said. Asuma and Kakashi swiftly and effectively went around the space, sealing every wall and nook with a barrier seal. All finished pops. After focusing and closing her eyes, Naruto saw a mass of chakra form in front of her. To the surprise of everyone else in the room, the chakra quickly took the shape of a small fox. As Naruto whispered, "Wow. It's weird seeing you out of my mindscape." The others were startled out of their reverie. As seductive as Naruto's had grown, the Kyuubi's voice said, "It feels good to be out. I haven't had the chance to stretch my legs freely in years." Kurama looked around the room, and since nobody was going to say anything, she brought up the one thing that everyone seemed to have forgotten. "Also, Kit, I believe you've forgotten one very important thing about the mission. A certain someone who is still waiting in the forest." Naruto looked frantically at the Hokage and exclaimed, "Oh shit! How on earth did I forget about Zabuza? I may have gained a possible ally. Don't ask me how, but he said something about me needing to learn how to..." Pausing to recall what Zabuza had said, she said, something about seduction and that I was a vixen." At that remark, everyone's eyebrows shot up. She was a vixen, but they would never have said that to a 12-year-old. Zabuza had the audacity to say it aloud. Kurama's tails fluttered languidly behind her as she said, "Perhaps we shall get the explaining things over and done with and then worry about him later. Firstly, the barrier is holding the chakra. Are you guys picking up on it? I want to know if I'm safe to go hunting later?" With a sharp glance at the fox, the Hokage quickly replied, "Only if you're hunting animals. No villagers or ninkin or pets." To the Hokage's dismay, the Kyuubi leapt up onto his desk and settled herself, saying, "You take all the fun away. Don't worry, I will only hunt the wildlife. I'm going to cut straight to the point here. When we agreed to merge, I didn't know what effects it would have on Naru. I knew my heightened senses would transfer, but I didn't believe my gender would. I thought about it but wasn't sure. The morning Naru woke as a female, she was sick. Now I believe that may return as her body gets used to accommodating my chakra and as a side effect of the change. There's also that other thing that only females have to deal with. You may want to organize a nurse to talk to her about it." "Shut it, Kit. Now since the merge, our chakra has come together to create a nice little combo that probably got Zabuza talking about seduction. I believe some of you have already felt it effects." Kurama smirked as she spoke. Naruto's face fell when she realized what Kurama was referring to, but before she could say anything, Kurama interrupted. "I don't know how strong that's going to get." Kakashi straightened up and turned to face his pupil. "Ma, hopefully it doesn't get stronger until she's older. She doesn't need anything extra to encourage boys. Unfortunately, my little Naru got the best of everything thanks to you." The fox didn't seem to care that the scarecrow was giving her a dirty look. The elder Sarutobi pointed to the Nara boy and said, "Perhaps young Shikamaru here could find the time to watch out for Naruto and make sure no one tries anything?" Hokage. "Sama, we are on different teams. I'm not sure how effective that will be. Wouldn't it be better to ask Sasuke or Kakashi, sensei?" Kurama rolled her eyes as the three adults exchanged a look. "Of course not. You are perfect for it. You already helped her out and knew things before others, so why not?" they said. She got up, stretched, and jumped off the desk, saying, "Men. One other thing, with the changes I don't know how many of my characteristics she's going to pick up on. She may start growling at things or pouncing or hunting, stalking, growing canines. Just something to watch out for Nara. Now, please release the barrier. I have nothing else to say for now. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going hunting." The fox began to joyfully prance in the direction of the door, but Naruto yelled, "Hey, you can't just leave me here," instead. She went on her way again, but not before noticing that Shikamaru and Naru were blushing. "You will survive, Kit. You have your new buck to keep you safe," she said. Kurama vanished as soon as the barrier was removed from the Hokage's office. The little fox proceeded to the main gates, taking care to avoid any interaction with either ninjas or civilians. Kurama shot into the tree line after sneaking past the guards. While waiting in the forest, Zabuza silently cleaned his sword and reflected on the events of the previous 2 weeks. He would never have considered visiting Konoha, but here he was, waiting for the Anbu to finally strike or for the brat to come get him. Shortly after he had calmed down, he sensed that someone was observing him, and he knew it was either an Anbu or a curious animal. Even though he wasn't sure if the brat remembered him, he ignored his audience and kept waiting. It took hours for anything to happen, and Zabuza sensed that another person had joined the group of onlookers. The two Anbu moved forward, displaying an eagle with only black markings and a cat-like mask with red and green markings. "Momochi Zabuza, Lord Hokage requests your presence." He stood up, brushed his trousers, and put his saber sword back on his back. "So this is it, he asked. He shook his head and followed the two Anbu closely as they led him to the tower, saying, "I must be bloody insane." When the Hokage learned that Zabuza was in the forest, he immediately sent one of his most reliable Anbu to keep an eye on him. The old man was intrigued when Naruto claimed that he had followed because of her. His curiosity increased as their meeting progressed, and he eventually dispatched another Anbu to bring him in. Without any opposition, Zabuza followed, and soon they were through a secret door into the Hokage's office. The Hokage was seated behind his desk in the office, with Kakashi and Asuma to one side. However, Zabuza's gaze fell on Naruto, who had taken to sitting on the floor, while the Nara boy stood behind her. He crossed his arms and spoke in a rough voice, asking, "Where's the other brats?" Zabuza grimaced at the awkwardness in the air before continuing, realizing that everyone was watching him and that he had extra sets hidden away. He pointed to the group and said, "I don't really care, was just making conversation. So what's with this?" Zabuza lowered his arms and prepared his fists, asking, "Are you going to chuck me to the T and I? Turn me in and get the bounty? You've let me hold on to my weapons, so what is it?" The Hokage ignored all of his inquiries and turned to talk to Kakashi and Asuma, who were either using a barrier seal to block out sound or were speaking very softly. Given that both genin were straining to hear anything being said, Zabuza assumed the latter. It took several minutes for the 2.5 sets of eyes to turn toward him. Kakashi turned his focus to Naruto and then back to him. If Zabuza had eyebrows, he would have raised them in response to Kakashi's question, "Would you protect her?" He could hear the protectiveness in it. Awkwardly shifting, he half shrugged and said, "I dunno, depends what for." Hardly to know the BR, before he could say anything more. "Momochi Zabuza, we have spoken about the possibilities and opportunities, the positives and negatives, and Kakashi has probably listed every con to this, but despite that we are offering you sanctuary." The Hokage took a moment to think. Only and only if you use this opportunity to train Naruto, not just in what you already mentioned to her, but in all subjects you know. For the first time in his life, Zabuza could not speak. He thought they would have sent him to the T and I first, but he had no idea it would be this simple. "We have many things to talk about, but not at this moment. I will summon each of you to continue later. Perhaps you should all go for lunch." They were all pushed out of the room at the speed of light by what could only have been a jutsu as soon as the Hokage dismissed them. Before Naruto broke the silence, the 5 of them were standing outside the door in disbelief. She was about to leave when Kakashi grabbed her by the shoulder and said, "Well, I dunno about you guys, but I'm gonna go get ramen." Pointing to Zabuza, Kakashi said, "Don't you want to sort this out first? Ma, you can't always think about food." She shifted into a pout and stomped her feet gently while whining, saying, "But Kashi-sensei, I'm hungry." Her mood completely changed before anyone could react. "I'm sure all you strong handsome men need a nice relaxing meal after all the hard work you've been doing," Naruto said, standing tall and shifting her weight to somehow emphasize her curves. Her eyes were half closed as she gazed at them, saying, "We can't have you big strong boys starving now, can we?" The small group stared at her in disbelief and remained silent. Asuma broke the silence first, throwing his hands in the air and saying, "Nope, I'm out." As the others awoke, he turned on his heel and began to leave. Kakashi shook his head and turned to Shikamaru, saying, "Honestly, I can't fault him on that decision. I'd be gone too if there wasn't a missing nin following you around. Don't think you can get away with it though. You've been given a task." He then led the group, which was now somewhat smaller, toward Ichiraku. "So, you're telling me, you are Naruto?" Naruto shrugged at the boy across from her, who crossed his arms and scrutinized her from head to toe. "Yeah. Yes. I am Naruto, or was anyway. I think the villagers think I'm dead, so whatever." "Nope. I don't see it. No way that runt could come up with something as good looking as you." Naruto looked past him and smiled, which made Kiba follow suit. "Listen here, dog breath. You got a problem? Then you can deal with my new friend. I'm sure he would love to kick a mud like you around for fun." Behind him was a bear. Like man with the biggest blade he had ever seen on his back and was covered in bandages. The man's broad smile, revealing his sharp teeth, made Kiba want to bolt. "What are you calling her a runt for when she's taller than ya, huh?" he asked. "Kiba, stand down boy." A well-known voice interrupted his thoughts and successfully diverted his focus. His team approached them. Kurenai stood tall, crossed her arms, and looked up and down at the big man. "Zabuza, don't cause trouble, just remember there are many eyes watching you." The woman swiftly turned and left, bringing her genin team with her to meet with Kakashi and Asuma, who were approaching from behind, followed by Team 10 and Sasuke. "You may want to loose a few layers too, don't need you overheating over something so stupid. You're not in Kiri anymore." Naruto silently decided with Kurama that it was time to test her hearing while the two men were having a private conversation. She concentrated on them and was able to piece together that they were discussing housing and Sakura. All eyes turned to Sakura as Naruto's voice reverberated throughout the training ground where they were standing. "Kashi-sensei, what's wrong with Sakura?" Kakashi approached her and said, "First of all, that was a private conversation, Naruto. Secondly, how in the world did you hear that? Thirdly, we should wait for Sakura." Naru gestured to the tree line where a pink figure had materialized and said, "Sorry. Rama. Chan and I wanted to test my hearing and Sakura is here now." "Did you just call?" Kakashi stood there shaking his head, unable to bring himself to finish the sentence. Sakura calmly said, "Hey guys, sorry I'm late," while keeping her face down as she joined the group. "Sakura, are you okay?" Naruto asked as she approached her teammate and then lowered herself a little to peer into her face. Sakura's eyes were bloodshot and swollen, and even Naru could see that she hadn't tried hard to look nice. "You've been crying. What happened?" The girl with the pink hair slowly lifted her head and glanced around the group before turning to face Naruto's. "I told my mom you weren't a monster. I told her she was wrong about you and that you were kind and caring. She tried to make me see her ways but I didn't budge." When Naruto heard that Sakura still agreed with her, she smiled broadly, but before she could say anything, Sakura went on. She continued to speak despite her voice breaking, saying, "So she kicked me out. No, she didn't just kick me out. She's disowned me. My own mother has disowned me. Over something as stupid as an opinion." Asuma and Kurenai escorted the group's boys away as Sakura started crying, leaving only Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Naruto standing there, along with Kakashi and Zabuza. Ino stepped forward and held Sakura close after noticing Naruto's awkwardness and realizing she wouldn't know how to console her. "Sakura, I know I haven't been a good friend to you, but I want to make it up to you. I can ask Daddy if you can stay with us? At least until we can sort something more permanent?" "You would do that for me?" Sakura asked, her eyes wide as she looked at Ino, turning to face the blonde girl and sniffing. She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes, saying, "Yeah, so what, can't just let my favorite billboard brow go without a bed." She was grinning as she moved. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for causing this, Sakura. It definitely wasn't something I thought could happen. If you want we can go clothes shopping. I need something new anyway. This no longer fits and I don't know what to buy." Naruto was scratching her arm when she awkwardly shifted. "Aw. If ya don't wanna that's okay too." Sakura stood as though she had suddenly forgotten her troubles and said, "What do you mean that doesn't fit you anymore? It looks fine if you ask me." After standing for a while, Naruto scratched the back of her head. She smiled again and went on, "Ah well you see it's kind of a henge. I had do it a couple days after we returned. If someone was to cancel it though people would start calling me a senju." Everybody in the group stopped, staring at her inquisitively, waiting for her to explain. "'Cause I'd raise a lot of wood." The girl's smile was enough to make everyone turn their heads and practically hear the silent, "Ba dum tisk." Ino took Sakura and Naruto by the arm and dragged them off before anyone could stop them after the group had finally moved past the joke about Naruto's and Kakashi had come to terms with the fact that he hoped it was only a joke. That left only Kakashi and Sasuke from Team 7, an uncomfortable Zabuza, and the entirety of Team 8 and most of Team 10 standing in the clearing, unsure of what to do next. Kurenai turned to her fellow Jounin with a hopeful expression. "Well, considering our main subject just got pulled away by Ino with that other girl, I think we should take the time to see how everyone has advanced. I hear the Chunnin Exams are coming up," Kurenai asked. Kakashi glared at the woman with his visible eye before saying, "Well, considering you just referred to my student as that other girl, I think we have some things to clarify first. I suggest all your students gather for this," he said. As the boys from Team 10 settled in, Kurenai took the cue and beckoned her students over. As soon as Choji took out a packet of chips and Shikamaru sat Berur, laying back with his hands behind his head, Kiba quickly plopped down nearby, with Shino at his side. Hinata shied behind the collar of her jacket, but she decided to remain standing beside her sensei. With a sharp glance at Sasuke, who appeared to be prepared to depart, Kakashi clenched his throat and nodded to the ground close to the others, insinuating that the boy should sit with them. "Right, now I have all your attention. That other girl is Kurenai so lovingly put as Naruto." He raised his hand. While Kiba was speaking, "Naruto is one of my students and was formerly known as Naruto. You will not treat her differently. Do that and you will answer to myself or Zabuza over here, or Shikamaru." Team 8's eyes went from being bored to wide, then shocked and afraid, and finally just plain perplexed as to why Shikamaru was brought up. While Shino only gave one nod, Kiba concluded that if even the Jounin were discussing Naruto's transformation into Naruto, then it must be true. However, Hinata was shocked to learn that the boy she had always admired was now a woman. The group training day that had been scheduled had gone horribly wrong. Sakura, Naruto, and Ino had decided to go shopping together after Kakashi revealed that Naruto was actually Naruto, and the group had broken up. Zabuza was hawking nearby, cleaning his sword on his lap, while Kakashi and Asuma were once again chatting away, probably planning something that would never happen. Once more. When you think about it, it's not surprising that the young boys took advantage of the day off to be lazy. Sasuke was sitting there thinking to himself, while Shikamaru and Choji were still eating chips and lounging, respectively. A beautiful young woman who appeared to be wealthier than the girls they had grown up with had replaced the boy from the academy days, who was notorious for pulling practical jokes and being an idiot. Kiba and Shino were sitting nearby, quietly discussing what had just transpired. They were extremely irritated that they had received no explanation for how this occurred. Kiba whispered, but his voice could be heard clearly across the clearing, "Why is Shikamaru one of her protectors? He is so lazy. What's he gonna do? Look at someone with a bored expression and hope they go away. I'd be a better protector. Wait until she returns and I will show her that." Kiba kept getting worked up over the situation, and his macho demeanor prevented him from thinking clearly. As a result, neither of them realized that their third teammate had vanished with their sensei. As Hinata sobbed, the two girls had relocated to a spot just inside the tree line for privacy. To think that she had spent all these years trying to improve herself and gain confidence for a boy who never really gave her any attention. A boy who was now more feminine than she was. The three girls eventually made their way back, each carrying a bunch of shopping bags. While Naruto had withdrawn into herself with a permanent flush on her face, Sakura had brightened significantly, but sadness was still visible in her eyes. In contrast, Ino had a sly smile on her face. Ino proudly stepped forward, his smile somehow widening. "You guys better be ready for this. Damn girl had me questioning my preference, if y'all know what I mean," he said. Before pausing, she gave the girl behind her a wide gesture, saying, "Everyone, I present to you Naruto." Naru stood there, scratching the back of her head, looking exactly like she had when they had left. As she spoke, Reed growled to Naruto. The others backed off a little. "Naruto." Sakura slapped the girl on the back of the head and went on, "Drop the henge. You can't stay like this forever. Besides, we put a lot of effort into our new outfits and I'll be damned if you don't show yours off." Sakura. Naruto sighed. "You three are evil, ya know? My freaking ass is hanging out in this. And my tits just stay in place when I walk, imaging what they'll do when I train." Kakashi walks up to the girls and stops them from talking further by waving his hands in the air. "Hold on a second, first of all three?" Even through the mask, Naruto could see the confused expression on his face. "Rama. Chan. Kashi. Sensei. Right. I'm sure she's behind the reason your ass and tits are hanging out," he said, clearing his throat as the three girls exchanged glances. His voice gets higher as he speaks. "Pretty much. Yep. Cammy, I love her." The three girls all nodded simultaneously in response. The scarecrow had aged considerably in a few minutes, and Kakashi was certain that he would be killed if he ever saw his sensei again. "Maybe the henge should stay up until I know exactly what you want to be parading around town in." "Nope." Ino spun around and yanked the henge loose, and before anyone could stop it, a puff of smoke flickered in and out. Naruto stood in front of them all, wearing the smallest bodysuit they had ever seen in place of Haku's kimono, which was incredibly difficult to miss. Naturally, orange. Sakura and Ino made the girl slowly turn around as though to display her new outfit. As she had stated, her ass cheeks literally hung out from the low dot cut back. With the high rise of the suit, the poor excuse of clothing accentuated her wide hips and narrow waist while sitting perfectly between her voluptuous cheeks. Through the open front, everyone could see Naruto's cleavage as he turned back to face them. It was sufficient to leave everyone speechless. Kakashi turned to the group behind him and growled, observing their reactions. "For Cammy's sake, the shopkeeper actually let you buy this?" he said. By his standards, some would make it through. Shikamaru had started staring at the sky too intently for it to be normal, while Choji had frozen with a chip halfway to his mouth and his jaw on the ground. Despite Shino's seemingly normal appearance, Kakashi continued to growl at him. The primary issue was Kiba. "If you want to live, I suggest you quit staring at my sister." Kakashi's voice was like venom as it reverberated throughout the training ground, drawing all attention to the boy, whose smile made him want to tear his head off. The young Inuzuka was about to be skinned and fed to his dogs when the man approached him. It might have been a bit drastic, but it would be worthwhile. Kakashi paused as he felt a hand grab his arm and said, "Kashi. Sensei, cut it out. If anyone wants to try anything I can easily set Rama-chan on them." He could almost feel Kurama speaking to him through Naruto's crimson eyes as he glanced back over his shoulder to meet them. "At least buy a jacket." With a sigh, Shikamaru headed home slowly. After the odd meeting that morning, they were all given the afternoon off, so Asuma-sensei made the decision to throw them a barbecue lunch. Asuma would order the meat and place it on the grill as soon as it arrived, then sit there and try to persuade Ino to eat and Choji to refrain from eating everything. It had gone down as usual. It was funny how, even after such a dramatic event, things could quickly return to normal. It made Shikamaru wonder if Team 7 had the same situation. When Shikamaru passed the academy, he noticed a flash of vivid orange close to the swings. Unable to control his curiosity, he turned to face them. Naruto sat with her back to everything. For a moment, the young Nara stood there contemplating whether or not he should approach her. Nevertheless, he found himself approaching her even though it was very tempting to turn around and go home. Despite the awkwardness and strain in his voice, Naru responded, "It's nice to see you actually went and got a jacket." Shikamaru observed that she didn't look at him and that her voice was quiet as she said, "We had already bought one when we went shopping. It's just a trench coat, but I couldn't find what I actually wanted." With a humming sound, he moved to the opposite side of the swing, where he could see her face from the forest floor. It was odd to see the tear stains on her cheeks, and even in the poor lighting, he could see them. It made him want to run. Shikamaru has never really seen Naruto cry because, as a child, he always managed to fight the urge to cry. Maybe her emotions are out of control due to the new hormones? Naru laughed briefly and said, "You know, I never thought this would cause so much trouble. I know you want to ask what's up. You don't have to be so awkward, Shika, don't worry so much." Shikamaru gave her a questioning glance. Never thought making Sakura a friend would cause her to become homo. Before she could say anything more, Shikamaru interrupted, saying, "She's not homeless though. She's staying with Ino, remember? Well, either way her mother disowned her just because of me. I know people hate me for what I am, but hell, Shikamaru. I dunno. I was thinking, maybe, I should have stayed unconscious." She opened her eyes to look at him. Shikamaru swiftly devised a strategy to stop the unshed tears as soon as she noticed they were starting to well up again. "Either way, Naru, you're here now. You're who you were and you're what you are. But you know what? Despite what happened, Sakura still wants to be your friend. She doesn't hate you for it. No one hates you for it. Kami, this is nothing in comparison to what happened in Nami no Kuni. Raise ya head up and I dunno." He stopped and sighed. "Have you had ramen since we all returned?" "Not yet. I didn't know how to face them. I've honestly avoided going anywhere until today." Naruto says with a gentle smile after giving Shikamaru a sheepish look. "Why? You going to shout me?" Shikamaru's expression fell as he realized at once that he would not be able to escape this situation. He sighed and stood up, rolling his eyes and saying, "One bowl." Shikamaru had no choice but to follow Naruto as she got up from the swing and exclaimed, "We shall see about that, Nara." She threw on her coat and turned toward her favorite store. As usual in Konoha, the morning had begun with the shinobi pacing the village, heading off to specific tasks, and the civilians getting ready for the day while the birds sang. Shikamaru stirred in his bed as the sun ascended over the tree lines. Shikamaru moaned and rolled over, pulling his blankets over his head to avoid having to get out of bed. He could hear movement outside his door and knew immediately that it was his mother on the other side. His mother opened his door with an unusually soft voice, saying, "Shikamaru, it's time to get up. You have team training today and I want you to get a decent feed first. Come on sweetie, up we hop." Shikamaru was immediately dubious, and his mind began to figure out what his mother wanted. However, before he could ask any questions, his mother tore the bed linens away. Feeling the temperature of the airdrop, he paused and said, "Mom, training isn't until later. I've got plenty of time to eat beforehand, and besides we will probably get lunch beforehand. Can't I stay here?" Getting up, he leapt out of bed right away and followed his mother out of the room. When they got to the kitchen, his mother started preparing breakfast. Sitting at the breakfast table, the young Nara silently observed his mother. The woman would occasionally turn to smile at him. It was really unsettling. Before long, a substantial portion of natto was placed beneath his nose. His mother sat smiling at him while quietly setting her own serve down across from him. Shikamaru began to eat while attempting to ignore her. Shikamaru stopped with his hand half-way to his mouth and slowly raised his head to look into his mother's eyes. "So, I heard you went to lunch with a pretty young lady the other day, He asked. He said in a steady voice, it was just a meal. She smiled a little and tried to hide it by eating another mouthful of food. So, what's her name? She asked. He rubbed his face and muttered, her name is Naruto, and as I said, it was only a meal. She had a rough day, so I shouted her a bowl of ramen. Nothing else. Even though he was now aware of his mother's activities, he still found it difficult to ignore her. Shikamaru eventually had enough of her prodding, so he excused himself, thanked his mother for breakfast, ran to his room, changed quickly, and hurried out of the house. The boy's speed was undoubtedly the fastest anyone had ever witnessed. The little fox above her snickered, and Naruto rolled over in her bed, pulling the covers up higher. Rama. Piss off, N. She kept bouncing up and down as Kurama sang above her, I wouldn't have to do this if you had woken up on time. You should be grateful this is all I'm doing. Immediately glaring at Kurama, Naruto sat up and slammed the blankets down. The young woman sighed, slipped out of bed, and walked blearily to her closet, saying, I hate you some days. She sighed once more as she pulled the doors open and began rummaging through her new clothes, as Ino, Sakura, and Rama referred to them. Honestly, Rama, I don't think I've seen anyone walk around freely in these clothes. Naruto rolled her eyes as she pulled out several bodysuits and muttered, at least they're orange. Before scurrying into the wardrobe to locate additional clothing. Kurama sat down on the foot of the bed and shook her head, seemingly smirking, as she vanished into the pile of blankets and clothing. Naru reappeared a short while later, carrying a box marked, for Naruto age 13.14, Naruto turned to the fox, who was still grinning, and stuck her tongue out as she stood proudly. After saying, thank you Gigi, now let's hope there's some decent pants in here, she ripped open the box and began taking things out. She stopped as she reached for a pair of shorts because they were all used clothing, some of which were Asuma's old uniforms and some of which were random items Gigi had gathered from the donation bins. Let's try these on, Disappointed, Naruto went ahead and took off her pajamas and put on the trousers. In addition to their unattractive appearance, they were absurdly large. Damn it. Rolling her eyes, she sat on the floor and acknowledged her morning defeat before turning back to Kurama. Looks like I have to go shopping. The girl sighed as the fox ignored her and started licking her paw. She laughed as she got up, put on the orange bodysuit, threw her coat on top, and then tackled her hair into piggy tails and fastened her weapon pouches. If only it was that easy for me, she exclaimed. Naruto looked at Rama, who at last gave her an acknowledgement. Well, I guess I will see y'all later then? She asked. Might go hunt some rabbits, just pull me back if you have a big mission or something's wrong, kid. Following that, they parted ways. Naruto discovered she was being followed as she was traveling to the market district. She rolled her eyes and pushed her stalker out into the open after noticing a rock-like box following her. As he emerged from his hiding spot, Konohamaru and two other kids stood proudly behind the boy, saying, you have amazing detection skills. What I've heard must be true, are you really a female now? She looked at the other two with him and said, Konohamaru, what are you doing? And, who are your friends? The girl joined the boy as he stepped forward, sniffed, and declared, I am the sexiest girl at the academy, Moegi. I am the brains of Team Konohamaru, Udon. Sakura joined the group as they were speaking and gave them all a peculiar look. What on earth are you guys doing? The three children smiled and looked up at Naruto, saying, we were here to ask boss if he... she wanted to play ninja. Sakura raised her eyebrows at the other girl and crossed her arms, saying, how mature of you, Naru. Konohamaru hesitated as his body temperature dropped. Say, boss. Is this ya girlfriend? If she is, I mean you could probably do better now that. The pink girl was glaring at him when he turned to face her. I didn't Maya. When Naruto's yelled, Konohamaru, run, he turned and ran as quickly as he could while silently cursing his short legs. He collided with something as he turned a corner and was propelled into the air. He shouted, aware that the others were not far behind him. Konohamaru looked up to see a glowering teenager frowning back at him. You little shit, watch where you're going. I should squish you into the dirt for that. With her weapons pouch ready, Naruto ran up to them and exclaimed, Oi! You put him down, ya makeup wearing freak. The intruder pushed Konohamaru aside and stopped when he noticed who was in front of him. Yeah. And what are you gonna do? He asked. Don't see people like you back home. The blonde girl behind him said, Konkuro, if someone was to wear that back home they'd get sand in their unmentionables. Naruto continued as the two exchanged glances. Naruto spoke in a stern tone and silently drew Kurama back to her, saying, I said, put him down. Shortly afterward, The two strangers were startled when the little fox materialized in front of the girl. With a snarl, the boy, now known as Kankuro, threw Konohamaru to the ground and said, "You seem pretty feisty for a brat." The two faced each other, prepared to fight if necessary, but before anything could happen, Kurama's first stood up, drawing Naruto's attention away. When Naruto didn't hear back, she looked up in Kurama's direction and knew something wasn't right. "Rama, what's wrong?" she asked. Another foreign nin was standing there, upside down in the nearby tree, but this one was different. She was reminded of Kurama prior to their friendship by the odd boy. "Sakura, kids, stay behind me. I don't trust this guy." The blonde and Kankuro both looked fearfully at the newcomer, Gaara. He glanced at Kurama and Naruto before asking, "What is your name?" "Kankuro. You are an embarrassment to our village." As she spoke, Naruto took care to maintain a steady tone. As soon as Kurama's name was spoken, his eyes widened a little before he returned his focus to the other two. "I am Naruto, this is Kurama." He vanished in a sandstorm, and the other two turned to depart as well. "We must leave now." Sakura yelled, "Wait! Why are you guys in our village?" before they had gone too far. "We are here for the Chunnin Exams," the blonde girl sneered as she turned back to Sakura. When Shikamaru eventually reunited with his teammates later that afternoon, the young Nara had been cloud-watching and contemplating the situation for a few hours when he heard a slight disturbance across the street. Picking out Ino's loud voice wasn't difficult. After gathering his thoughts, Shikamaru got up and began to walk in the direction of her voice. As he turned the corner, he noticed Ino, Sakura, and Naruto engaged in conversation, with Kurama seated at their feet. Naruto's voice was a little strange as she said, "I just don't think anyone should trust him. Seriously Ino, if you come across him stay away. You need to tell the others too." Shikamaru couldn't help but wonder what had happened. "Shika." Ino shoved past Naruto to seize him and drag him into the circle. They quickly resumed their conversation and told him what had transpired. Shika put his hands in his pockets and looked up at the sky, saying, "Chunnin Exams, huh? Maybe that's what our team training sessions are about this Arvo." Sakura looked at everyone inquisitively and said, "I don't know about you guys, but it's almost time for Team 7's meeting anyway. Maybe we should head over to our training grounds." After traveling to the training grounds, the two teams finally met Choji. As they got closer to their grounds, the two girls from Team 7 said goodbye, and Team 10 proceeded to theirs. Once inside, they noticed Asuma Sensei standing in the center, his arms folded, smoke in his mouth. "Congratulations, I'm entertaining you lot into the Chunnin Exams. Hopefully you show up to them earlier than you did to practice." The Jounin celebrations of entering their genin into the Chunnin Exams had begun when nightfall had fallen over Konoha. The small group had gathered at their favorite bar and quickly took over a booth. Asuma, Kurenai, and Kakashi had all joined their rookie teams, and although some weren't pleased with how quickly they were progressing, the three senseis nevertheless got a lot of pats on the back. Guy eventually cornered Kakashi after several hours had gone by. When the scarecrow finally responded to the man, a portion of the group fell silent. "Kakashi, my hip rival. You should be enjoying the night, what has you just sitting here for?" "Ma, things have just been weird lately. First, Naruto woken up one morning as a woman and next thing I know, I have a bloody missing nin as my shadow. Now I've put them in Chunnin Exams. Just can't shake the feeling something else is going to happen." Kurenai grinned broadly before Kakashi gave her a stern look. "I think that's the most I've ever heard you say in one burst. Look, can't exactly help you on the whole, my male student is now female, but if she needs help or advice from someone other than a 12.13-year-old just come and get me." Asuma waved his hands in front of him, but he couldn't help but smile. "As for Zabuza, he's all yours. Thought he was meant to be with Naru anyway? Gee, thanks guys. Yeah, not until the exams are over with now. Hokage. Sama is afraid Zabuza will sneak in and encourage her to just flash her enemies into submission. He doesn't want it to look like our next generation is inspired by Anko." Looking at Kakashi, who appeared to have frozen, Asuma lit another cigarette and said, "Hey, maybe you should introduce Zabuza to Anko and Ibiki? Kakashi? That would either break this village or do this village a whole lot of good." After giving it some thought, the Jounin all quickly reached a consensus. All they needed to do now was locate Ibiki and Anko. For Team 7, the following day arrived swiftly. Sakura and Naruto knew immediately what was going to happen when they arrived at their training ground the day before and saw Kakashi, Zabuza, and Sasuke standing solemnly. They were standing awkwardly in front of the academy after Kakashi had spoken to them fairly and made sure they understood that they were free to leave if they so desired. Naruto looked at her teammates and scratched her bicep, saying, "Well, here goes nothing I guess." Sakura inhaled deeply as Sasuke grunted and grimaced in response. She glanced at Naruto and said, "I wonder if the others have been entered?" with a hint of concern in her eyes. Not exactly looking forward to seeing that Tsuna team again. "Let's just hope they're all bark and no bite." Sasuke's voice had a faintly humorous undertone, so the girls remained silent while he finished speaking. Like Naruto. Sakura chuckled as Sasuke hurried to the doorway, and Naruto pouted and followed him, but she didn't answer his remark. Instead, the girl waited until they were inside the building before barging Sasuke into the doorframe. Before sprinting down the hallway to the sign up area, Naruto turned and stuck her tongue out at the Uchiha, saying, "Oops." Sakura took the boy by the arm and dragged him in the direction Naruto had run, leaving Sasuke somewhat taken aback that she wasn't attempting to flirt. "Don't encourage her, Sasuke. Let's just get this over with," she said. When Naruto stopped at a large crowd observing a loud commotion, the two eventually caught up to her. A peculiar-looking boy with a bowl cut stood in front of them. He was wearing a green jumpsuit with orange leg warmers and a red belt supporting his forehead protector. If Sasuke and Sakura had ever thought Naruto's Go.to outfit was odd, they no longer do. Sasuke watched the two genin obstructing their passage through the door as the argument went on. Why were they acting in this way? Something about them seemed off. Wait a minute. We don't want that door. Even if Sakura hadn't noticed, he knew that some of the people knew they had been the rookies and would believe it when he voiced his opinion and used her as backup. Sasuke could feel Naruto twitching next to him. They had been standing there for too long. The two genin turned on them as soon as he spoke, ready to fight. She rolled her eyes as he gave her a look that conveyed a message without words. Just hurry up. Sasuke kicked the genin at the same moment, but the same odd boy they had previously been teasing grabbed both of his ankles before they could make contact. "Lee, Wa," said his team as the green-clad boy spoke. Everyone looked at Naruto, who was standing there with her hands on her hips and tapping her foot, and said, "Oh, for Kami's sake, can everyone just shut up? I'm freaking sick of standing here, yeah? Why are y'all fighting? It's already been stated that we are on the wrong level. Seriously, why are you two playing games? Finally get sick of gate duty, huh? Can everyone just move out of my fucking way before?" Naruto. Sakura silenced her teammate's tirade by giving her a head slap. "There is no reason to be talking like that. But I do agree, can we just move on already? Never before have I seen a woman as beautiful as you. Would you please be my girlfriend?" The green-clad boy said again before the two girls could turn to leave after Sasuke's simply "H-end" in response. The boy's eyes were fixed on Sakura, who stood there in shock, and Team 7 froze as they turned to see who he was speaking to. "Well, I dunno about you, Sakura, but I'd say yes just for the free food," Team 7 said. Naruto. Sakura slouched her on the back of the head once more. "I am sorry, but I must decline your offer." "Thank you though," she said, turning to face the boy. "Erg, those brows," exclaimed Team 7 as they eventually made their getaway while the boy sobbed in silence. Sakura looked at Naruto in disgust and said, "They were like caterpillars. I kinda like them." However, Sasuke interrupted her before she could say anything more. "Naruto, how did you know those two were the gate guards?" he asked. As Naruto considered it, the two girls froze. "Well, I mean they were chibi versions of them and I could just feel it, yeah?" Naruto said. "Good enough. Let's just hurry up." Kakashi had been waiting for his genins to appear by the doors. They turned the corner down the hall and argued silently about something for a long time before the three of them finally appeared. He said, "Congratulations on all deciding to enter. If one of you had decided against it, then the others wouldn't have been able to enter, but I didn't want you knowing that in case you pressured each other into entering," as he pushed himself off the wall and rolled his eyes. After glancing at each of them, he said, "Good luck." Kakashi left before they could respond. After exchanging glances, the three of them made the decision to go into the room. Sasuke opened the door and let the two girls go by him. Naruto walked by and muttered, "Damn." Hundreds of genin were present before them, and they were there for the same reason. They turned into Chunnin. "Well, Luki who is here too," Kiba said as he emerged in front of them, holding Akamaru on his head, while Shino and Hinata were standing behind him. "Hey dog breath." Ino interrupted them before Kiba could reply to Naruto. The girl started to hold on to the boy, but she noticed Sakura and Naruto staring at her. "Hey Sasuke," she exclaimed. "Hey guys." The blonde smiled clumsily before moving away from the Uchiha, which made the boy cast an eyebrow at his teammates. After Sakura initially retreated, they were able to stop Ino. It was an odd place. Alongside Ino, Shikamaru and Choji said, "Nice to see the rookie 9 are all here. It will be interesting to see how everyone had progressed." Naruto looked at the boy and crossed her arms over her chest. "Shika, you know how we've progressed. Sakura lives with Ino and we've seen each other every other day since Wave." An older boy with white hair interrupted the group as they were chatting among themselves, saying, "That may be so, but we don't really train together and we haven't seen much other Team 8 since graduation." He identified himself as Kabuto and said they should probably keep it down because they were receiving a lot of unwanted attention. Kabuto went on to tell the group about his experience and show them his information cards. As time went on, the rookies learned more about Lee and Gaara. Sasuke, wanting to see how trustworthy the cards were, asked for information about Naruto, much to the girls' dismay. Kabuto had his own altercation with a sound team while they were debating whether or not to divulge information about one of their own while foreign teams were listening. A cloud of smoke formed at the front of the room before things could get out of hand, and as it dissipated, a group of proctors moved forward. A big man with a bandana on his head was in the lead. Before describing the initial examination, the man identified himself as Morino Ibiki, the head of Konohagakure's torture and interrogation department. Naruto started crying as soon as he said the words, "written exam." Naruto started to shift uneasily in her seat as soon as the timer went off. Looking around the room, she saw that Kotetsu and Izumo had changed from their genin form to sitting along the wall as part of the group, keeping an eye out for cheaters. With a sigh, she turned her focus to the ceiling and carefully examined it, finding a few strange-looking stains, a few holes where pencils or other objects had been thrown, and an odd-looking bug. She began tapping her fingers on the desk without thinking, drawing a few irritated looks, though she was unaware of them. Kurama, who had taken to sleeping in her Mindscape, sighed as more time went by and Naruto still hadn't even looked at her test paper. "Naruto, will you at least give it a shot?" Naruto gave a rather loud click of her tongue, drawing more attention once more. "Nope." For a brief moment, Kurama remained silent, giving Naru the impression that the fox had given up. Unfortunately, a puff of smoke appeared just in front of her eyes, and an orange paw emerged from it, slapping her in the face. "Hey!" Naruto stood, knocking her chair over as she did so, forgetting where she was. Ibiki yelled across the room, "Sit down and shut up," which made everyone freeze except for Naruto. The girl gave the fox, who was now lying idly on the desk, a dirty look as she picked up her chair again, and then she met Ibiki's gaze. She started it. The man threw a kunai at her paper, so it seems that was a mistake. Naruto rolled her eyes and sank back into her seat, saying, "Don't make me kick you out for simply being a menace, kid. Everyone get back to it." The number of teams was drastically reduced as a result of numerous genin being caught cheating and obviously slacking off in their attempts during the disruption. Kurama gave Naru a cunning grin as the disqualified departed, but she simply shook her head and the fox. "Dare you draw a snoring teddy bear on your paper?" Naruto grinned as she listened to Kurama's thoughts. When she looked up at Ibiki, she noticed that he was staring at her, which only made her smile. She picked up her pen and began working on her masterpiece, occasionally looking up at Ibiki and examining him before moving on. The foxes noticed that Kotetsu, Izumo, and Ibiki had started observing her while she was working. Kurama silently instructed her to draw the two holding hands, which made the girl smile once more. When the time came for the last question, which terrified many other students out of the test, Naruto looked around, met Sakura's eyes, and grinned while quietly assuring her that everything would be alright. Naruto returned her focus to Ibiki after receiving a nod in return. As two of the genin in the front row got up to say they couldn't risk it, Naruto interrupted the man's glare, saying, "Ya no Ibiki, under all that seriousness is a cuddly little teddy bear." The man then turned back to her as she heard snickers going on around her. "And what makes you think that?" The room went quiet as everyone waited for Naruto to respond, but before she could, a huge banner flew from the window with a loud crash. Ibiki glared at the figure behind the banner, saying, "Anko, you're early, I haven't even finished the last question." When she struck a pose, she purposefully struck Ibiki in the face, saying, "Yeah. Well, let me do it for ya. You all pass, right? Now that's done. Let's move on to the second part of the exams. This'll definitely cut the numbers in half, you must be going soft, Ibiki." The genin was left perplexed and unsure of where to go when she abruptly left the room. Ibiki was forced to tell the group where to go and sent a few of his assistants along with them, but not before outlining the exam's actual purpose and the last question. Ibiki sighed as the final Jounin left the room and made his way over to where Naruto had been sitting. As he got closer, he noticed that she had flipped her paper over and left a sketch of something. He stepped forward, picked up the paper, and growled when he saw a drawing of a teddy bear curled up in bed with tiny snore lines. Z's rising from it in the center of the page. The man couldn't contain his laughter as he rolled his eyes and noticed another small drawing in the bottom corner. There was a small love heart between Kotetsu and Izumo as they stood hand in hand. Ibiki immediately decided that he would photocopy that section and affix it to the Jounin Lounge's walls. Many people complained about the dark, towering trees that towered over them when the group was finally led to the location of the second exam. Welcome to Training Ground 44, or as many locals know it, the Forest of Death. Enko accepted the position as a proctor because she had a sly smile on her face as she observed everyone's reactions. Without trying to conceal her happiness at their concern that many would not survive, Enko continued to describe the dangers of the forest. Teams 7 and 10 stood silently together off to the side as Enko spoke, sharing their thoughts on what she was saying. Kurama was the only one with prior forest experience, and that was only because she had recently gone hunting here. The two groups had decided to get together, go through the forest together, and then go hunting for the scrolls as a pack. The fact that they had been assigned entrance gates that were directly adjacent to one another was entirely coincidental. The two teams quickly met and formed one as Team 10 immediately turned right and ran along the fence line, and Team 7 turned left as Enko announced the start of the second exam and the gate guards cleared them for entrance. They had no idea that they were being watched from outside the fence line until they vanished into the tree line. Zabuza was on the ground, leaning on a tree, while Asuma and Kakashi sat high in the Konoha forest. Asuma said softly, "Interesting how bad events lead to good things." The other two men simply nodded in agreement. Enko had emerged in front of them, staring at Zabuza weirdly. "What are you lot doing here? And who is this? I call bullshit." Kakashi leapt from the branch he was in and said, "It's not bullshit, Enko. This is Zabuza and he is real. Actually, I was planning on introducing him to both you and Ibiki but didn't want to do while you were proctoring the exams. I guess he can chill with us. Might be able to make some of our guests in the cells shit themselves," Enko said, crossing her arms as she gave Zabuza another, rather lengthy, and possibly intrusive, look up and down. She turned on her heel and laughed silently before making a loud announcement that she was going for dango and that she would shove the sticks in inappropriate places if someone interrupted her. Hey guys, can we stop? I got a wee eye," stated Naruto's, his face contorted as the two teams ran. Kurama began growling as she returned, and the others slowed to a stop as Naru dashed in behind a tree. Naruto turned to the others and asked the fox, "What's up with you?" But Sasuke cut her off before she could say anything. "Who are you? What do you mean? It's me." The others in the group stiffened, braced for anything. "Then why is Kurama growling at you?" Everyone shifted into fighting positions in response to the statement. "Maybe ate something wrong. I dunno, who cares?" Shikamaru and Choji separated to look for the real Naruto. "If you're going to henge into someone, try and do your research first." To start with, Naru wears her weapons pouch on the other leg and her hite ate over her navel. As soon as Sasuke finished speaking, the person realized they were henge and leapt forward to seize their scrolls. Fortunately, Sasuke was able to stop them in time, injuring the nin and forcing him to back off. Shika burst out laughing as soon as Shikamaru and Choji discovered Naruto. A hog-tied Naru was on the ground, fortunately with all of its parts covered. Naru turned to glare at Shikamaru and moaned, "Shut up, they didn't even let me pee. Just untie me or I think may piss me pants." As soon as Choji moved forward to cut the ties, she was standing up before he could blink. Naru swiftly pushed them away and made them turn around while she went about her business. Following some cursing and griping about her attire, Naru concluded and proceeded to return to the others. When they all reconnected, Kurama made the decision to continuously scan their environment and sense any unfavorable feelings. She also made a note of each person's chakras to keep for identification. She informed them of the sound team's location, which was far away, and as she was picking up another unknown, a strong windstorm split the teams apart. Kurama used her tails to cling to those closest to her as the group was blown apart. She turned to see Naruto, Ino, and Shikamaru after they had crashed into the dirt. She cursed, made them all stand, and instructed them to return to the others as soon as possible. However, before Naruto could say anything more, a huge snake materialized behind her, which made Ino scream. From that point on, everything happened so quickly. The snake attacked Naru and swallowed her whole, and as the others watched in disbelief, its stomach grew until it exploded. With a frown on her face, Naruto rose from the mess as Ino gasped at the flesh striking her. She used her hands to wipe her arms and legs before shaking them off, saying, "That was fucked. Let's just get back to the others." As a group, they ran and soon discovered where they had been blown away. Searching for the others, they discovered them up in the trees, all three of them facing an odd-looking woman in defensive positions. They were on the ground when they noticed another snake getting ready to attack the three from behind. Without hesitation, Naruto sprang into action and drew Kurama back into her. They witnessed everything from where Shikamaru and Ino stood. They saw Naru divert the attacker's focus, defeat the snake in her Kyuubi enhanced form, and then cry out in horror as Naruto was flung unconscious into a tree. The woman turned on Sasuke and used a jutsu that stretched her neck out and bit him, causing him to collapse almost immediately, before they could ascend to their level to assist in the battle. The attacker vanished as soon as Shikamaru and Ino touched down on the branch the others were on. As she surveyed the scene, Ino exclaimed, "What the heck just happened?" Shikamaru had already arrived in Naruto, while Sakura and Choji were caring for the unconscious Sasuke. "We need to move. Then we can talk. I will carry Naruto. Choji, do you think you can carry Sasuke?" Hours later, the group had discovered a space in one of the big trees that would both comfortably accommodate them and provide them with protection, so they finally took a nap.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.